called meeting of the Mayor and City Council of City San Bernardino. And before we begin, let's go ahead and do a roll call. Ms. City Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Here.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Here.
Councilmember Charette.
I'm here.
Councilmember Nickel.
Here.
Councilmember Richard.
Here.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Here.
Everyone's present. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Mayor Von Sylvia. Sorry.
I'm here. Thank you, Ms. City Clerk. We will go ahead and ask if there's anything to be added to closed session. I don't believe there is, but is there any other comments from City Manager or City Attorney?
None from me, Mayor.
Okay, and then Ms. City Clerk, do we have any closed session public comments?
No, none were received.
Okay, very good. At this time, I'm gonna just provide a quick update on the calendar for closed session. I will ask for the help of the Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Sanchez, to take over items 2 through 8 due to a conflict of interest. And then also item B, the 5 cases, tort claims, I will also conflict off of that. And so at this time, I will ask that Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez hear items 2 through 8 on calendar item A, and also B, the first meeting of the Mayor and City Council. We call to order this open session in our public session, and we apologize for being a few minutes late to those in our viewing audience. Good evening, and we welcome you tonight for being joining us here via Zoom. At this time, I'm going to ask that you stand as we salute our flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time I'll ask for a closed session report. Ms. City Attorney.
Mayor, council members, and members of our public, we did have a lengthy closed session discussion this evening with lots of cases and administrative items related to personnel and real property. I do not have any reportable action required under the Brown Act.
Thank you very much, Ms. City Attorney. At this time, we'll move on to the presentation portion of tonight's agenda. I do have a proclamation for National Public Works Week from May 17, 2020 through May 23rd, 2020. I'd like to read this proclamation. This is a little bit odd, but Chris Jensen is joining us, and we thank you, Chris, our new Director of Public Works. This is to our city crews and all of the pothole fillers and the people that really keep our city clean, the graffiti removal. I'm overwhelmed with presenting this proclamation of the Mayor and City Council for National Public Works Week. It starts here. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of City of San Bernardino. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels within our city public works department and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essentials for our citizens here in the city. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of San Bernardino to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest in understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of San Bernardino Mayor and City Council do hereby designate the week May 17th through 23rd, 2020 as National Public Works Week. We urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and the ceremonies designated to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees and to recognize the substantial contributions that they make to protecting our city and our quality of life. We present this to you on the 6th day of May 2020, and it's signed by all of the city council members. And so we thank you, Chris, and your leadership. We're very excited to have you aboard, and we thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you, Mayor, very much.
At this time, Ms. City Clerk, if you would please begin the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, please, just real quickly, I'd like to recognize we close in that person's honor, and if I could take just a minute and talk about that person, please.
I'm sorry, who, Fred?
Somebody that passed away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Can we do that towards the end of the meeting?
Sure, I'll be happy to do that. I just want to make sure that we close in his honor.
Okay. All right. Very good. I'll make a note of that. Let's
Thank you.
proceed on. Ms. Rocha, go ahead with public comments.
Okay, so written communication was provided to the mayor and council prior to the meeting. I know that there are a couple of council members that have written comments that they want to read into the record, and we have 9 voice recordings for public comment. Which ones did you want to begin with?
It's your discretion, Ms. City Clerk. Please proceed.
Okay, Councilmember Nickel and Councilmember Richard, do you want to read your comments first?
Yeah, I can read mine.
Okay.
This was received by email today. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and City Manager, here we go again, folks. Another claim and another lawsuit because of the irresponsible and careless decisions of one of your council members. Why Councilwoman Ibarra violated a lawsuit agreement is beyond comprehension. Obviously, Councilwoman Ibarra did not read the settlement agreement with Andrea Miller, or she doesn't care about spending tax dollars frivolously on preventable lawsuits. It appears from Councilwoman Ibarra's actions that the city has an abundance of eucalyptus trees overflowing with money. Instead of incurring more lawsuits, the City Council should be trying to settle the current lawsuits that are still pending and stop the financial bleeding that is increasing by the day and making the lawyers richer. I hope the City Council is not going to put Andrea Miller's latest claim and lawsuit ahead of the current lawsuits that have been on the table for several years because she knows where the dirt and skeletons of the city's current and past city officials are located. This corruptive, unethical, and immoral behavior should land several people behind bars where they should be. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, and I received this in a voicemail today from who does it? Hardy Brown. Sorry about that, Hardy Brown. It's today is it's Nurses Appreciation Week from May the 6th continuing through May the 12th. As you know, I worked in the healthcare industry for 30 years at Kaiser Permanente in Fontana and throughout Southern California. I joined with many others of you, including St. Paul AME Church, who treated the nurses at Community Hospital with some PPEs and chicken dinners and others to say thank you. To quote Dr. Anthony Fauci, there are a lot of different ways for people to thank healthcare workers and nurses, even during this time of isolation. Whether you know any nurses personally or not only are they giving life-saving treatment to people, but every single day they're putting themselves at risk for themselves and their family. I just think that the American public owes a phenomenal debt of gratitude to these people. And we should just salute them in every way you can. When you see healthcare workers, just applaud them. The article that he read in the Sun newspaper regarding Damian Alexander to have the city police department do a pop-up call at St. Bernardine's Hospital on Highland and Waterman and Community Hospital on Medical Center Drive to show appreciation to a medical staff on the front line saving fellow citizens' lives. The article went on to quote the leaders of these fine community organizations. I will let the article say it. It's been a very challenging time for those of us in healthcare, especially caregivers and physicians caring for COVID-19 patients, says Clean, St. Bernardine's president. The fact first responders are doing this really makes our staff feel appreciated. As a result, said Collison, Community Hospitals president, the nearly 700 physicians between the two medical centers have had to keep their distance from loved ones at home out of extreme caution. And for police officers, the firefighters, and paramedics to recognize and sacrifice, Collison added, show such unselfishness. It takes a community to care for everyone that lives in it, Lean said. The fact that other people are reaching out and saying thank you is pretty incredible. In addition to thanks and gratitude, Collison said the cards and gifts delivered Wednesday by first responders on behalf of the community conveyed unity in uncertain times. We have been in this community for over 100 years, Collison added. This is our community, and the folks that live in this area that know this is their hospital, that have always been supportive of it. They have just put the icing on the cake, what they did for us today. While he did not formally invite the city council as a whole, Alexander said he reached out to Councilwoman Sandra Ibarra and Bassine Richard because the hospitals are in their wards. As a former police commissioner in the city, I agree with the way Alexander handled the event. I understand other city leaders did attend the event along with the chief of police. I want to thank you for saluting our healthcare heroes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more council members wishing to read anything?
No,
If
but
not,
I didn't hear who Henry's email came from. Was that announced? Henry?
No, it was asked to be anonymous.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. City Clerk, let's proceed with general public comments, please, if you'll go ahead.
Okay, just one moment.
Debbie Ariola, 7th Ward. Hooray for the medical professionals and first responders during this pandemic. They deserve to be recognized and honored. However, the event the mayor spearheaded wasn't that kind of event. This was a politically motivated, look at me event instead. How wonderful it would have been if the residents of the city knew about the event in advance, could have joined the caravan, stayed in our cars, not hugged or gathered for photo ops, and simply just showed support. Keeping people healthy should be the top priority, but the pictures clearly show it was no priority at all. This was an embarrassment to our city as well as an embarrassment to Dignity Health, who ran a full-page ad in the Sun with pictures and a shout-out to the mayor. It's so incredibly sad that in a time of crisis, PR means more than life. We virtually have no police department. As citizens, we get no response from PD on reports of loud music, fireworks, gunshots, nonviolent crimes, and quality of life issues. We live on our own and hope nothing violent happens, because if it does, it will take PD 8 to 10 minutes to respond. As for enforcing health mandates, we are on our own for that too. The acting chief stated as much at the last council meeting. Yet in one of the pictures of this event, there were 4 police cars, and 6 police officers. Just think what else they could have been doing with their time and our money. I have always been a cheerleader for San Bernardino. I try to point out the good things happening here, and I try to be involved when I can. But it's becoming nearly impossible to be positive. This city has failed us. This mayor and council have completely failed us, and our future looks very bleak. Imagine how nice it would be if the mayor and his council minions thought of the citizens first, were future-oriented, and did their best for the greater good. I'm heartbroken, I'm angry, and I miss my San Bernardino. Mayor Valdivia, it's time for you to do the honorable thing and step aside. And council minions, it's time to step up and realize that you are on a sinking ship. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Damon Alexander, and under normal circumstances, I would not use this forum to speak about myself, but Councilman Mulvihill has let me know other options. First, I'm not on Mayor Valdivia's team or his puppet or any other words you wish to describe me. I am Team San Bernardino, Team 7th Ward, as a whole, and always have been. If you knew what the mayor did to me in the primary, you would not even make such ridiculous statements. But you know that's how you operated in your team. You will say and do anything to win your seat. I hope this was slow enough for your understanding. I'm not going to let you and your team demonize the community salute to San Bernardino's healthcare workers during this COVID-19 crisis, as many cities done before us and after us. Since you have all this energy to write about the salute to the healthcare workers to your crony Brian at the Sun, why don't you take some of that energy and deal with the fact that the city of San Bernardino was named the #1 crime city in California? There's another murder last week. How about focusing on crime reduction? How about forging some relationships with the sheriff, fire, and the feds, and how about hiring an army of grant writers to get our police additional funding so we can get more officers on the street instead of talking about me? Priorities. Since you have all this time on your hand, why don't you call on Public Works to fix the potholes? Well, let me help you out. There are 3 ginormous potholes on the entryway on the 210 on Highland, so large that you can lose an 18-wheeler in them. Priorities. You acted faster to accuse the police department of doing something wrong when they were just doing their job. It's called community-oriented policing. Then you did the call for an update on the mayor's investigation. Finally, it's on the agenda, but hard dates have passed. And by you sitting on your hands and not calling for something, it is called the city money. You sent emails to the city manager, the city attorney about the community pop-up caravan that produced positive imagery of our city on channels 4 and 7 and even the San Bernardino newspaper. And you managed to turn something so positive for the city and inspired our frontline workers into a distraction. Well done. Priorities. Instead of trying to embarrass me, how about developing an exit strategy for those homeless people who are in our hotels and who now vouchers are about to expire? Do you have a plan? Is that not more important? Priorities. If I were you, I would be giving my full attention and vigor to get us out of this $5 million shortfall we have because of COVID-19. Do you have a plan, Councilman? Oh, yes. Your plan is just take the money from the reserves and just move on. Priorities. If I were you, I'll be working to get San Bernardino reopened again. Since you have all this zeal, what is your plan to open restaurants, retail, and other industries? Call me. I have a plan. Priorities. Oh, and by the way, you did show up and participate in the caravan. You didn't bring any call help.
This is for public comment. Good evening. My name is Jeanette McKay, and I'm a resident of the 7th Ward. I'm concerned over the direction our city is headed. We have a pipeline of avoidable lawsuits that will likely cost our city millions of dollars. I say avoidable because the majority of them stem out from the alleged abhorrent behavior by the mayor and irresponsible votes from the council. Irresponsible votes include voting to cut the pay of the city clerk and city attorney. One council member said it would save $52,000. This lawsuit is likely to cost our city over $200,000. Now, math was not my best subject, but how does spending over $200,000 save us any money? This city is not your personal ATM that you can withdraw money at your pleasure to settle grudges or use for campaign stunts. This must stop. Our city residents deserve better. We deserve to have services without the threat of cutting back on them or cutting them out completely. If it is impossible for you to put the residents of our city first, then step aside and let someone else lead. If it is impossible for you to distinguish what is right and what is wrong, then step aside and let someone else lead. If you are only beholden to your donors and not to your oath of office, then step aside and let someone else lead. Mayor, your lawsuits and alleged corruption are a distraction to our city. They hinder your ability to be an effective leader. Do what is best for our city and step aside and let someone else lead. Thank you.
Shirley Harlan, Harlan. Item 2, support the San Bernardino County COVID-19 Emergency Hotel Motel Response Plan. I recommend approval of 50 rooms for the homeless. It is necessary for this virus epidemic. Homeless people need a place to shelter in general, but during the COVID-19 pandemic, it is even more important. The hotel room provides for cleanliness and safe isolation. This would be a start, even though there are 600 homeless in San Bernardino City alone. Direct the city manager to enter into agreement with the county as soon as possible. We want fewer persons exposed to the virus. The county has the money for the motel hotel expense, and this will help our local revenue too, since the state is paying for most of it. I have broken bread with our homeless and do not want their risk increased during this time of emergency. We may need to increase the rentals, but this is a start for the most vulnerable among us. End of my message.
Hi, my name is James Albert. I'm a resident of the 7th Ward here in San Bernardino. I'm calling in to recommend approval of 50 rooms for the homeless. It is necessary in this COVID-19 pandemic. Homeless people need a place to stay, to shelter in general, but during the COVID-19 pandemic, it is even more important. The hotel room provides for cleanliness and safe isolation. This would be a start, even though there are 600 homeless in San Bernardino City alone. Direct the city manager to enter into an agreement with the county as soon as possible. We want fewer persons exposed to the virus. The county has the money for the motel or hotel expense, and this will help our local revenue too, since the state is paying for most of it. I have broken bread with our homeless and do not want to risk increase during this time of the emergency. We may need to increase the rentals, but this is a start for the most vulnerable among us. Thank you for your time, and I hope you make the right decision. Bye.
This is for public.
Give me one moment. I lost my spot.
Treasurer Ortiz, public comment. So I hope as you all come out of closed session after discussing all of the open litigation and potential litigation of this city, that those of you that have not been directly implicated in all of this start taking action to help preserve the city and the residents. We are facing more and more litigation that is putting us into financial ruin. You have a new claim after coming out of a settlement agreement with Andrea Miller because Sandra Ibarra wants to put a guy who's drunk 90% of the time I've met him on her Facebook because she wants to get on there and not understand what a confidentiality agreement is. You have another claim by an employee of John who's pushing and saying that he was trying to have sex with her. She went to HR and asked for help, and yet you look at your investigation report that the city manager tried to shove into the consent calendar and say that the investigation is just hard. I don't understand if you guys think that nobody's watching what's happening in this city. Being incompetent and doing stupid things on Facebook doesn't stop us from getting sued. Allegedly being a coked out alcoholic in clubs doesn't stop us from getting news statements and declarations saying that you were trying to bribe cannabis applicants. It doesn't stop from employees coming forward and saying that the mayor was trying to sexually harass them. Everything that you guys do, regardless of whether you know it or not, in the function of a council person, affects the residents of the city of San Bernardino. Now, you have a city manager who has failed to put anything forth as far as financial cuts in this extremely dire time. And you know what that means come June 30th? That we are going to be even more unprepared than we are now. Why is Terry LaDonte and won't putting anything but her salary up for cuts, the raises that you gave the chief of police and the assistant chief of police up for cuts, furloughing full-time employees, doing massive budget cuts where you have 80% of your budget in PD, None of that's happening. No, what you're doing is sending people out to parades that are being put on by political candidates, and it's unacceptable. You guys need to stand up and ask for the resignations of John and Juan. You need to have Sandra pay for her own leave.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Paul W. Sanborn here. I'm calling in regards to Mr. Sanchez, the Pioneer Cemetery up there and second part. So awesome right now. It's the best I've seen it, and I don't know when. Congratulations for doing a well job done. Thank you, and have a good day.
Hi, my name is Leticia Garcia, and I'm calling because I have been reading and seeing reports that once again there are allegations against the mayor of San Bernardino and an additional council member in the 3rd Ward, Juan Figueroa, that they both have possibly received bribes. And it is incumbent upon the rest of the council to make sure that this is not just swept under the rug. This needs to be investigated. I'm calling on Mayor Pro Tem Teddy Sanchez to put this on the agenda as a future item to discuss and to create an investigation to make sure that we do not have this type of corruption continuing to happen. We cannot have pay for play politics in the city. We have enough issues. Obviously, the mayor should resign immediately, and obviously, so should Juan Figueroa. This is completely unacceptable, and somebody has to do something about it. I also would like to mention that the contract with BB&K, specifically the acting city attorney, Sonia Carvalho, needs to be re-examined. She is completely incompetent, allowing the council to go on and on, violating laws from the Diet, violating the Brown Act, letting people speak out about closed session, not doing her job. Her role as the city attorney is to help the people on the Diet stay out of trouble, and instead, she just lets the mayor not run meetings correctly. She lets the mayor shut people up, doesn't let other people speak when they have the floor. She's supposed to help with that, and she does absolutely nothing. So she needs to be investigated as well, and she probably needs to be fired. I'm counting on you guys to do the right thing. Whoever is left up there right now, if you know that John and Juan are taking bribes and you do nothing, then you are complicit. Please do your jobs.
The following is the last recording.
This is Dorothy Garcia, a resident of San Bernardino, and I'm speaking in regard to item number 2 on the agenda. San Bernardino County, as required by the state because of the COVID-19 emergency, has been securing hotel and motel lodging in the county to provide individual room sheltering for certain populations, such as homeless individuals over 65, non-symptomatic and more susceptible persons, while other rooms are being reserved for those who are COVID-19 positive while they recover, and for essential county employees. When you discussed this request from the county at a previous meeting, you expressed concern that homeless persons from throughout the county would be housed in the city of San Bernardino and Victorville. According to the agenda of the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors yesterday, that concern is not justified. The following hotels, motels in the following cities are identified as entering into contracts with the county for the amount of money indicated. Ayers in Chino Hills for April 14th to June 14th at $1,004,400. Ayers in Redlands for April 20th to July 20th, $908,500. Ayers in Barstow for April 30th to July 20th, $1,350,100. The cities in which these hotels, motels are located will receive transiency occupancy tax money from those hotels. The city of San Bernardino should not again turned down an opportunity to receive some of the tax money available because of this program for serving the homeless and others affected by COVID-19. And by the way, San Bernardino as a county seat also needs to show concern for those affected by this virus. You have a tentative agreement prepared by staff which lays out necessary restrictions. I urge you to approve the agreement with the county for temporary emergency lodging for individuals at risk and essential county employees. Thank you.
That was the last public comment.
Okay, thank you, Ms. City Clerk. We appreciate it. Moving on to item number 2, receive a report on the County of San Bernardino COVID Homeless Emergency Hotel Response. Ms. City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you. And thank you, Dorothy Garcia. She cited a lot of things that I'm going to be saying to you this evening. This is to provide you with and the public with an update on the county's COVID-19 homeless response plan. As Dorothy said, the county is mandated by the state to secure these hotel rooms to provide shelter to homeless during the crisis. Some motels are being secured for homeless individuals over 65, non-symptomatic, more susceptible, while others are being secured for COVID-19 positive as they recover. Last month, the city was made aware that the county had secured 50 rooms for this purpose on Hospitality Lane. This was a concern for several reasons, including the fact that our community would be disproportionately disrupted if the county did not secure other locations throughout the county, that these locations would lack security and put a drain on city resources, that there was no plan in place to ensure that these individuals would receive the wraparound service needed, and that there would be no cap on the number of hotel rooms secured within the city of San Bernardino to ensure that other areas in the county also made rooms available. The occupancy, we were concerned that the occupancy would not be limited to 14 days per individual, and at the end of their stay, they would either be provided with, not be provided with other opportunities for longer term housing opportunities and return to their location of origin. And that the city of San Bernardino homeless individuals meeting this criteria would be given priority under this plan for these hotel stays. So recognizing that the city needs to do our part, last month staff reached out to the county to make our concerns known regarding the placement of these individuals. Through letters to the county CEO and the motel owner on Hospitality Lane, the city asserted that hotel and motel owners are not permitted to enter into such agreements with the county due to our zoning restrictions and business licensing requirements. Under the city's codes, hotels are permitted for hospitality and hotel use, not to be used as a social service facility or as a homeless shelter. However, in good faith and to work with the county to do our part, City of San Bernardino staff, along with our city attorney, drafted a cooperation agreement between the city and the county that, if both parties had approved, would have allowed the county to fulfill this obligation to contract with hotels and motels in the city's jurisdiction for emergency lodging for homeless individuals and families during this period. However, the county, and it would have also provided for the county to use the Carousel Mall as a testing site. However, they have since found an alternate location for their testing site, and that's no longer an issue for them. Following a review of the proposed agreement, County CEO Mr. McBride conveyed that at the time the county is not entering into such agreements with individual cities in the county. However, in place of the agreement, the county is committed to the guidelines as outlined in their COVID-19 Homeless Emergency Hotel Motel Response Planning document, and that is attached to the staff report as attachment 2. In that document, the county is providing all jurisdictions in the county with the following guarantees: that cities would be indemnified similar to hotels, that they would be included in the hotel agreement, that the county would ensure that all program participants who exit the program for any reason are immediately transported back to the referring community at no cost to the city. And in the event that a program participant leaves the hotel for any reason and is not immediately transported to the referring community, the city may immediately contact the county, which would promptly provide transportation to the program participant to the referring community. That the hotel will ensure that all outside lining is operational and that landscaping is maintained and in good condition in accordance with city standards. That the hotel and or county shall provide security guard 24 hours a day. Daily accounting of occupancy and the location where the program participants reside from would be kept, and program participants would be given have to sign an agreement outlining their specific codes of conduct. Additionally, since this writing of the agenda, we have been made aware that the county has secured 4 locations, as Ms. Garcia just told you, in Hesperia, Chino Hills, Redlands, and Barstow. The agreements in San Bernardino terminated at the end of April. While this informal agreement that the county has proposed addresses many of the city's concern, the draft cooperative agreement would have made the terms more specific to the city of San Bernardino and allowed the governing bodies of both agencies to participate and agree to the terms. However, while we are pleased that the county has secured additional locations, it's important that we continue to monitor this situation on potential impacts to our community. There is no recommended action. There's no agreement for you to approve, as the county is, as I mentioned, does not want to enter into agreement with the city. However, we did want to receive and file this report because I know there's been some concerns from the community, and you can provide direction to staff as you see fit.
Thank you, Ms. City Manager. I want to commend the good work of our city manager for your leadership. You remember that the city council directed our city manager to write a letter of opposition to the county and the impacts that it would have certainly along Hospitality Lane. So I want to salute you for your good work. Terry, you've been phenomenal at addressing this. Unfortunate that there is some resistance still by our county CEO to not oblige and really kind of participate and work with our city. We'll continue that relationship. I think that's just a relational type of deal through my contacts with county supervisors. But the bottom line is this city is, certainly impacted, especially when they're congregate and assemble along Hospitality Lane, which is, in our estimation, it is the moneymaker for this community. And so the impacts are real. Councilman Figueroa and I want to also extend my deep appreciation to Councilman Figueroa for him joining me. That very Friday, about 48 hours after we learned of this, me and Councilman Figueroa both sat with 2 main property owners along Hospitality Lane, one of which is the Sure Stay. And I want to say thank you very much for Councilman Figueroa and his adamant support and advocacy for the continuance of recognizing that Hospitality Lane is really a cornerstone, and we cannot have that type of visits on Hospitality Lane. So we'll open it up to council members. Councilmember Mulvihill.
And in addition, to give credit to Councilman Nickel as well, he was present during that meeting. I appreciate his presence during that meeting.
Thank you. That's right. Thank you, Councilman Figueroa. Councilman Nickel, you joined us, I think, for one of the 2. And so I say thank you also. My apologies, but I appreciate you. And you had a lot of insight and that conversation. So thank you. Councilman Mulvihill.
Yes. In addition to the lack of cooperation between the county and the city with regard to finding some sort of an agreement, one of the issues that I had with the whole idea of this, what the project Room Key, is what happens after the emergency is over with? Are they going to turn all the homeless people out in the streets? I mean, that's where we are today. There hasn't been a long-term plan on just what the state, and again, this comes from Newsom. There hasn't been a long-term plan. In fact, most of the money coming out of the state are one-term grant programs. Remember a couple of years ago, the HEAP grant, I forget what the acronym meant, but again, it was a one-time grant program. And if you want to house homeless people, it can't be a one-time grant. There's got to be a line item. And so one of the issues that I have with the state and I guess now the county is that they're not looking at the homeless problem as a long-term issue, that they need to really address a long-term issue. Put them into these hotels for the length of the emergency. Well, then what happens? Then they go right out, back out on the street. So what I'm, I proposed before is that we need to provide space for these people as the Boise decision mandated that we need to do. We need to provide prefabricated accommodations for these individuals away from the city center where we generate most of our sales taxes. but we do have to get them out of the doorways and the backyards of our residents. But again, we need long-term solutions, not Band-Aids. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to send my appreciation on a related note. The op-ed by Assembly Member James Ramos this past Sunday regarding the reopening of Patton Hospital. I think that is a reasonable solution that I would like to have conversations and continued dialogue with our Assembly member regarding the Patton State Hospital as an opportunity to address the homelessness crisis, and not to put words into the Assembly member's mouth, but I think that's a viable solution here, and I will continue to explore those opportunities. Council member, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. City Manager.
If I may address Councilmember Mulvihill, I didn't want to imply that the county has not been cooperative, because they have been. They've been very responsive. They just didn't want to enter into an agreement with the city specifically because they'd be different with all cities in the jurisdiction. And I did check in with Gary McBride today, and he told me at the end of the stay in the hotel in San Bernardino, they were able to locate homes for some of those individuals for longer term. So that was good news.
Ms. City Manager, are they currently still the Sure Stay on Hospitality Lane, so they're no longer in contract, and those homeless individuals have moved out?
That's my understanding from Gary McBride today, that the contract ended on April 30th.
Okay, all right, and it has not been renewed, and all right, very good. Open it up to Councilman Nickel. I think you expressed.
Yeah, I received a number of questions from constituents, so just very quickly. How many hotels in the city were utilized by the county, Terry? Just one?
It's my understanding that they only secured one, and that was the one on Hospitality Lane.
Okay, and since then, what is the disposition? I guess some of these individuals have been put in homes. What happened to the balance? Do we know?
Again, Gary reported to me today that at the end of the stay, the 14-day stay, they were able to locate longer-term housing for some of them. He didn't tell me how many.
So the other ones are unaccounted for.
Well, the county has to account for them under their funding sources, so they would have that information.
You mean
if they were
after their stay, they have to account for them, or only during their stay?
During their stay, and then they would have to account for where they went back to when they left the hotel.
Can we find that out?
I can certainly check with Gary, yes.
Okay. And then will there be any future accommodations or no?
Gary did not mention any other hotels that they are currently in discussion with in San Bernardino, just the 4 that I mentioned in my report outside our jurisdiction.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Ibarra.
I want to send my appreciation, Ms. City Manager, for your report. It was very thorough. I appreciate the efforts that we're doing with the county, because that is one of the concerns of bringing all of everybody else's homeless into one particular city. And I'm happy to hear Hesperia, Chino Hills, Barstow, and Redlands are part of it. I think I just read an article that also Ontario is allowing for hotel vouchers currently. So I do want to put, as council members, when we had that conversation back on April 1st, we were shed in very negative light out there, but we need to tell people that we were housing homeless in that hotel on Hospitality Lane. If anything, that was done without even having an agreement with our city. So I appreciate the efforts you're doing with the county right now, Ms. City Manager, and we look forward to really working with the county and getting those reports of what happened to the, I believe there was 26 at Sure Stay, or approximately, that were there. So if we can get an update on them, if they were sent back to their jurisdictions, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, just sort of fill in about the homeless issue in San Bernardino. The homeless count, the point in time count for 2020 has been out, and you can, I think the city manager has sent out copies of it. And San Bernardino has 1/3 of the county's homeless, a little over 1,000 population. Of that, about 825 are unsheltered. So within San Bernardino, as of last January, there were about 820 unsheltered homeless. So if they're not being housed in I'm not quite sure where they're putting them, then they're still out on the street someplace. So we really have got a large homeless problem that really needs to be dealt with on a long-term basis. Thank you.
Okay, this is a receive and file, folks. If there's no more questions or discussion, we do have other items on our agenda. Thank you, Ms. City Manager, for item number 2. Let's move on to number 3. Consider initiating an annexation of the remaining unincorporated islands of abutting the Spring Trail Specific Plan Project area. The City Manager?
Hi, Huntley, our Community and Economic Development Director, will give this report.
Thank you, Terry. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, in March of 2013, the Mayor and the Common Council approved what's referred to as the Spring Trails Specific Plan area. The specific plan had included a wide variety of entitlements at that time, which included a specific plan, which is a master plan development tool, which was specifically designed around a 350-acre site up in the northwest part of the city, just outside of the Vertimont area, or actually within the Vertimont area. It would have included up to 307 new single-family residential homes. The entitlements also included a general plan amendment, a tentative tract map, and a development agreement. In addition to that, the product was also supported by a final environmental impact report, as well as a mitigation monitoring and reporting doc. The reason why I bring that up is you've heard over some time some of the complaints and concerns from the residents who live in the area, but the environmental document that was done for that project back in 2013 was certified by the City Council at the time, also include an analysis of the fire hazard area, the fault zones, circulation, high wind areas, flooding, and a wide variety of other constraints within that area. In March of 2015, Montecito Equities Ltd, the developer, did file a landowner petition for annexation with the San Bernardino Local Area Formation Commission. Since that time, the applicant's been working with LAFCO on the annexation. In October of 2019, LAFCO had approved the annexation of the Spring Trails area, but left out an area of about 26 acres. At the January 15, 2020 City Council meeting, the Mayor and the City Council considered this annexation that had come before the Council because of a condition of approval that was added to the annexation by LAFCO. At that meeting, the City Council had decided to table that item to some future date. On March 18th of 2020, the Mayor and the City Council discussed this item in closed session. Based on that discussion, the City Council had provided direction to put this item back on the City Council agenda, which is why we're here tonight. Now, really, the main focus of this particular item is this. This is not a project where Council is going to make a decision on the development of Spring Trails. Really what this is this is a request or a condition coming from LAFCO to the City Council requesting that you consider adopting a resolution that would indicate that at some point in the future, the City Council would pursue the annexation of a 26-acre area, which is referred to as the donut, which includes approximately 6 parcels. LAFCO had provided a condition of approval that before the applicant can proceed or before they could issue a certificate of completion that would allow the applicant to proceed with their project, the City Council for the City of San Bernardino would need to adopt a resolution that would indicate that they would move forward at some point with an annexation. Now, if you'd like, I can read the condition of approval. It's within your packet. I did at the last council meeting in January as well. I know there were some questions back at that previous meeting. Councilman Nickel brought it up in regards to what specifically was LAFCO asking us to do. And LAFCO did provide a response to the applicant. The applicant even had requested clarity from LAFCO. In your packet, there is a letter from them that indicates what their intent was. It really didn't clarify the issue that Councilman Nichols brought up at that point either. But really, at the end of the day, what they're looking for is a resolution from the council that the city would commit at some point to annex this particular area. It doesn't have to be done today, but at some point in the future. If this is not done, and if council doesn't adopt a resolution, then at that particular point, then the local area formation commission will not issue the certificate of completion where the applicant can move forward. So where we're at tonight is staff's recommendation is the same as it was back in January. We are recommending the city council consider the adoption of this resolution so the applicant can pursue their project. For the council's benefit and the public's benefit too, this project actually initially started back in 1996. It took them 17 years to finally get approval through the city. That approval did occur back in 2013. They're just trying to finish the last component, which is the annexation. The annexation would then move the area from county jurisdiction into the city of San Bernardino, and we would be the entity providing the services, with the exception of fire now, which is now provided by County Fire. So that concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to answer any of a variety of questions. I do want to point out again, there's a lot of information included in the packet. We have included all of the LAFCO reports that are very detailed and provide a lot of really solid, good information for council consideration as you consider this resolution tonight. So
Thank you, Mr. Huntley. We appreciate the report from staff. The emphasis, I think, is this is a procedural move, and it's now this is a rework of what was previously done, and hopefully that has provided some additional context and background. And we'll open it up for discussion or questions from council members. Let's start with Councilman Nickel. Are there any, out of courtesy to the councilman from?
I'd like to hear the comments of other council members, but I certainly have comments. I'll hold my comment.
All right. Let's move it. Any council members? Council member Ibarra.
I believe Mobile Hill was already waiting. I'll wait after him. I'll let him go first.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Sandra. Mr. Huntley.
Yes.
I'm looking on page 35 on the agenda packet, and it just sort of, generalizing in what they say there, unless we move to annex this surrounded island of unincorporated, this 26 acres, the county will tag this onto any kind of annexation proposal we send forth in the future automatically, that we'll have to annex it.
That's what the condition says, correct.
Yeah. And so really, we really have no choice. It's probably better for us to annex this property so that it'll be, we'll be able to talk about it with regard to the new general plan, with regard to the capital improvements program and so forth. If it does need a widening of Myers Road and so forth, I think it's much better. We're going to be forced to do it because we annex property virtually every year. And so if we don't annex it, if we don't have a resolution tonight, then it's going to be forced on us when we don't know exactly what the circumstances are going to be sometime in the future. So again, I be very much in favor of simply having a resolution to annex the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barr, go ahead.
Thank you. I do have the concern still that this is going to be part of the city if we do decide to annex. And as is right now, we're being challenged with even our city streets and fixing them. So on my end, I'm not in favor of annexing at this time until our city is more fiscally responsible with fixing what we have currently. I'm very concerned if this gets annexed back to us and we don't have the means to even expand those streets or fix those areas on city dollars. So I'll be voting against the resolution.
Mr. Huntley, perhaps, I hear what you're saying, Councilmember Ibarra, but the risk benefit, if you will, the potential to attract larger homes, nicer homes, upscale homes with the property tax might offset many of those improvements. But Mr. Huntley, can you maybe address what is the initial, what's the proposed plan with this tract of land?
Well, the proposed tract of land would allow up to 215 new single-family residential lots. There's a variety of amenities that are part of the project as well. I do want to point out, and one of the things we tend to forget is that is when we do and we review products of this size and scale, they are required to do mitigation associated with that. So when it comes to all the infrastructure to be able to accommodate this project has to be borne by the developer who's building the project. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to install the appropriate water systems, sewers, the storm drains. They may even have to extend streets, provide connectivity. They're also going to have to pave adjacent streets, also based on the conditions of approval for this project. I guess just generally speaking, a new subdivision of this type in this area of the city, I think would be of a benefit to attract new buyers to, I'm going to call it the Vertimont area, increase property values. If you go back and read the plan of adjustments, one of the things that brings up is the fact that our median home prices are so low, and that dissuades people from wanting to come and buy here in the city. This would only increase property values.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mr. Charette, council member?
Thank you. I'm going to support this item, but I think it needs a little clarification. We're just really tonight indicating that we will annex it at some point in the future, correct? We're not voting tonight to annex. Is that right, Mike?
You are correct. There is a long process that has been outlined in state law that we're going to have to follow and work with LAFCO to work through. So it's you aren't approving anything. At the end of the day, we're going to have to go, and as you're probably aware, there's 6 parcels, and I think there's a total of 14 voters within that area. When you go through this process, they're going to have to participate in this process, and it's not up to us, it's up to some of the voters up there, right? So with that said, our intention may be to do it, but if we don't get all the necessary votes and are not able to comply with LAFCO's regulations, we may not be able to annex it. It's just kind of an open-ended component.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And I also, I just want to make it clear, and the mayor said it, that this allows us the opportunity to hopefully some point in the future build some upper scale homes. We've got one out in my ward at the other end of the city called Highland Hills, which also is going to be upper scale homes. And we've got the state of California is in dire need of housing. And we in the city of San Bernardino are in dire need of upper scale homes, homes of a higher value. And this is progress, and it's something that I think is just crucial moving forward. I'd like to be voting tonight, and I know we're not, but I'd like to be voting tonight to eliminate all the county pockets in the city. It's an outrage that we have these little county pockets, that we've got sheriffs and police and people crisscrossing our city, and I don't have the background on how county pockets ever came to being, but they're not a benefit to us. And I think that ultimately I want to see all the county pockets in this community eliminated. With that, of course, comes the cost of services, but with development and with upscale property taxes and people coming in with disposable income that can spend money in our stores and in our once this COVID thing is done and we open this economy back up, I'm supportive of it. I'm supportive of good new development. And I also think if you went back to some of and I've been here probably the longest, and I've been voting on this project for quite some time. I think if you go back and look at some of the tapes, I think I've even made the comment that in the event of a fire, I think this, based on what I understand of this project, is probably going to be the safest place to be because of all the mitigating issues that they're going to deal with in terms of fire breaks and sprinklers and blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. I think it's going to probably be a very, very safe place to be ultimately. So I will be.
Fred, is this a motion? Am I hearing a motion for approval?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
If I could comment.
I'll second it.
Councilmember Richard records her second in support of it. All right, Councilmember Nickel.
Yeah, and I just want to ask for some clarification now. In terms of annexation, LAFCO has more or less approved the annexation of the project area conditioned upon the annexation of an area that is not part of the project area. Is that correct, Mr. Huntley?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Carvalho, is it legal for LAFCO to condition an annexation and threaten future annexations if we don't annex this parcel or these parcels that are actually not part of the project property?
So first of all, Councilmember, I'm happy to answer the question. I am not a full legal expert in LAFCO issues. I represent the cities most of the time, but I believe that what led to this condition of approval, and we can ask Mr. Huntley if he wants to comment on this, is that the original application did contain all of the area. I think that's what led to the condition that was rendered.
Can they prevent us from annexing in the future if we don't follow through with this request to annex non-project properties?
I think that would be interesting as to whether they can absolutely decline. That's why this resolution that you are considering is voluntary. It's almost like a contract in a way with LAFCO. You would be saying to LAFCO, we accept the condition. What I find interesting about the condition is that the application you put forward did include this land. They are now moving forward with that application, but carving out from the responsibility of the applicant.
Did we move forward with an application?
My understanding is that it was the developer who actually processed the application with LAFCO. And that has been one of the issues that we've identified, is that they then took a condition and did not impose it on the developer, but are imposing that condition on the city.
Exactly. And I think what we're doing is we're mixing and mashing up different issues here. The fact of the matter is we have complied with the development agreement in terms of accommodating the annexation of the project property. What we are doing now is engaging in an additional process of annexing property that does not belong to this developer. It is privately owned. My understanding is that in order for this project to be developed, much of the access to that project will go over property that is not currently owned by the developer. Is that correct, Mr. Huntley?
You're correct.
Now, if the developer were to buy those properties that are subject to tonight's consideration, they could then request an annexation of those properties. If they don't, we are subject to the will of those property owners in terms of whether they will agree to that annexation of their property for a project that is not was not originally to be put on those currently non-annexed properties that are part of that donut hole. So if they were to buy those properties, they could annex it in as part of their project, correct? The developer.
Sure.
Okay. So what we're doing is we are forcing property owners that do not wish to be part of the city and basically committing ourselves to an annexation process to annex in their properties that are not part of this project, that were not part of this development agreement. And I'm very concerned that we are now creeping into territory that really starts to sound almost like an eminent domain type of action on the part of the city to force property owners that are outside the property of this project to be part of an annexation that they don't agree with. And I am fundamentally opposed to taking this action tonight. I don't think it's legal. I don't think it's proper. And I think if the developer wishes to annex that donut hole, they should purchase the property and then annex. But I am not going to force property owners that are not part of this project site into an annexation process. I think it's unjust. I don't think it's right. And I think it's an abuse of government authority. I will be voting no.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Councilmember Nickel. Councilmember Figueroa. Oh, I thought you raised your hand. Okay, if nothing more.
I'll go ahead and comment.
Councilmember Sanchez, please go ahead.
Yes, the developer had the opportunity to have bought those private parcels, and They didn't do that. They could have done that. They could have included that into their project. But I think this really is a litmus test. This developer, I'm not convinced, is ready to develop this once he has all those permits. He's going to sit on it for a while, because if he really intended on building out these houses, he would have bought out those 6 parcels, and this would have easily been resolved, because he wouldn't have to go through, or he could have gone through the route of having a property owner petition that would have included that. But that's not what's happening here. He is getting the city to try to annex it through force. And I don't think it's right, because first, I think it's not our responsibility to do that. And second, I don't think that the developer has an intention to develop that right now. If I was convinced that the developer was going to do that, was going to build out as soon as all those permits were in place, then I'd be happy to follow through with this. But I am not convinced that he's going to build. He's going to sit on this parcel of land for a long time. And then once he thinks he can make a profit, he will sell.
I agree with that. Thank you to my colleague. Mr. Huntley, just real quickly. Now, the plan anticipates access going over these currently non-project properties. Is that correct? That there would have to be some takings on some of those currently non-project properties in order for the project as originally submitted to be developed?
Councilman, I think what you're referring to is their secondary access to the site, because they need 2 points of access.
Correct.
So their secondary point of access, they would need to get either purchase land or gain easements across those properties, and there's numerous properties, to be able to provide that secondary access.
Yeah, I think this is a premature action. Let's let the developer negotiate with those property owners, accumulate those properties, and I'll happily support an annexation at that point.
If that's a substitute motion, I'd like to.
Yes. I would like to reject the floor motion and resolve that we table this matter until such time as the developer acquires the properties necessary to complete this project.
Absolutely. So I'll second that motion.
So, council member, your motion is to move the table?
Yes.
And that
we'll
was
reconsider it once they purchase the necessary properties and address this issue on their own. There's no reason for us to solve this problem for them.
Okay, so your motion is to move to table the matter, and that's the same motion that you made previously on a previous. That's why
nothing's changed here, Mayor.
I understand.
We can visit this issue 1,000 times.
I understand, Councilman. I'm just trying to provide some context to our viewing audience. That you
further discussion.
Previous conversation. I understand, Councilmember. Just a minute. That you provided that. So and there's a second
motion to table. It's non-debatable. So.
I'm providing context. I'm the chair, so just a minute. Just a minute. And there's a council member that has seconded the move to table. And if the city manager, or I'm sorry, city clerk would please call the roll on the move to table.
Okay, motion to table by Councilmember Nichols, second by Councilmember Sanchez. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra?
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa?
Yes.
Councilmember Charette?
No.
Councilmember Nickel?
Yes.
Councilmember Richard?
No.
Councilmember Mulvihill?
No.
Okay, the motion to table passes 4-3.
I will veto that. I think we're at a crossroads here and we need to continue the conversation. So the motion is back on, and the discussion, we will have it publicly regarding the merits of this. I want to remind Mr. Huntley, this is a procedural move. There's 2 council members making the implication that somehow we're disenfranchising these folks from voting. We're actually allowing them the opportunity to cast their vote. This is a procedural move. We're not taking any action to annex tonight. We're simply procedurally processing the request so that it continues on to LAFCO at which time that agency has the authority to continue the vetting of this project and to see and verify if the project has the merit. And then ultimately the LAFCO board, there's still several steps before this is even annexed. So Mr. Huntley, can you provide the council some of those aspects regarding the process of LAFCO?
Mayor, I'll do the best I can, just to kind of clarify it, to be honest, because it's a separate process from us. So really at the end of the day, if, let's just say, for instance, council was to approve the reso that was presented, and then at this point, the next question would be is, at what point will city council direct staff to proceed with the annexation? And then at which point then we need to identify a budget and move forward with that process. So then we'd have to officially submit an application with LAFCO, submit the appropriate fees, and then process through LAFCO. And there's steps that have to be followed associated with that. Again, just like the city attorney said, with LAFCO, they have specific procedural requirements. So would have to notify the 14 voters and the 6 property owners who live up there. We have to go through that particular process. That'll take, I would probably think, a number of years to get through that process, even before it's ready for consideration. As the staff report does indicate, the existing 14 voters or 6 property owners up there really are not in favor of annexation based on the information that's been shared with us, although that gives them a fair and reasonable right to be involved in the process. Right. Again, this is part of due process. So they would have a chance to participate. Really, at the end of the day, there's no guarantee that we would be able to annex it subsequent to meeting the LAFCO's requirements for annexation. Again, I apologize. I can talk about local government rules and regulations, but LAFCO is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse.
Mr. Huntley, for clarity's sake, this has come, I think you provided a timeline. It's in the backup. This has been vetted through Planning Commission, your department, and it's come before City Council. This is really an opportunity to provide the first steps to more development in our community. Anyway, Councilman Mulvihill, you had your hand up, sir?
Yeah, if I could just add, and the vote among the residents, it takes a 2/3 vote for annexation. So, if the residents are really against annexing it, the likelihood of them voting in favor of it is very small. So it's 2/3 vote.
And the onus is upon the developer to make those inroads. It's a free country. He has the opportunity to persuade, convince, and discuss and collaborate with those property owners up in that area. And so that's his responsibility. We can't help him on that. He has every opportunity to make that outreach effort. Councilmember Nickel.
Yeah, Mr. Huntley, could I get some clarity on the letter that we received from LAFCO? Now, the only obligation we have for their application to annex to be considered and approved is simply to approve a resolution, not to actually annex these additional parcels. Is that correct?
Based on my review of their letter and the condition, that is correct. Although,
okay, so we are actually voting to annex in that parcel. And what we're going to do is we will be creating a pocket, to Mr. Charette's earlier comments. There is no pocket currently, but the action we take tonight will create a pocket. And now we're going to create a pocket in which the voters in that pocket do not wish to be part of this development. And from everything the developer has submitted so far, in order for their development to move forward, they need these properties. So now the city is going to be in a position for us to actually realize that quote unquote revenue of that development. We will have to take those private properties. We will have to use a takings action if those voters choose not to annex in. And we will actually be voting to annex in the project property tonight by approving this resolution. So I want to provide some clarity and context, folks. We are creating a real mess for ourselves with this action tonight if we approve this resolution. It's a mess that is incumbent upon the developer to sort out and work with those property owners now And if he or she who oversees that development wishes to proceed, acquire those properties and come back to us, and then we will happily move forward. But what we are doing is we are putting ourselves into a serious quagmire right now. And what we are going to do, if we don't take those properties that are currently privately held and are required for this development to move forward, we will be preventing this development from moving forward. And then, folks, what do we do? So think about what you're doing tonight. Right now, we don't have a quagmire, but you take this action tonight, you will immediately create one. Think about your actions.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Nichol. Councilmember Charette.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I beg to differ. And I need either legal or Mike on this. What we are saying tonight with this resolution is we are just telling LAFCO that we will try at some point in time in the future to annex this property. Just try. And that's all we're telling LAFCO, is that we're willing to say that we are willing to try to annex this property. And if we can't do it, it'll be the property owners that will have the vote on whether or not this can be annexed or not. And they can turn it down, and LAFCO.
But we will have to serve the annexed portion of the property that's the project site currently. That'll be our obligation, Fred. Forever. Forever. Yes, it will.
We're not annexing it.
Yes, we will. This action will annex those parcels. The development project. Could we get some clarity on that, Mr. Huntley? I don't think our council members understand what we're dealing with here. Those project properties will be annexed.
We are not
annexed is the donut hole.
We are not voting to annex those 6 parcels.
Yes, we will. By approving the resolution, that is exactly what you are doing, Mr.
telling LAFCO that we intend.
No, we will own the project site. That will be our obligation as a city. What will remain undetermined is the status of that donut hole.
Councilmember Nichol, let's allow Mr. Charette to continue.
We don't know what we're talking about here, folks. Let's get some clarity from our staff and listen to what your staff
Can we get clarity from our city attorney?
Hold on, guys. Just please. Mr. Charette, and wrap up your comments. You're recognized.
My comments stand. We are not voting tonight to annex that county pocket. Those 6.
The project property, Fred. The project property will be annexed by.
We've already approved that. That's in the sphere of influence.
It's not. Not if we don't approve this
Council
resolution.
members, I don't want to have to ask the mayor to put you both on mute. We do need to take control of the meeting.
Can we get some clarity on what exactly we're voting on, Ms. City Attorney? That is your job, to provide legal clarity on the consequence of our vote tonight.
Okay,
My
Mr.
understanding is
Mr. Nichol, hold on, Ms. City Attorney. Let me try to referee here. I appreciate the passion on both sides of Mr. Charette, Mr. Nichol. We'll get to your question, Mr. Nichol. Very good question. Ms. Ibarra, do you have any final questions here?
I did, and this is just a point of clarification with our city attorney. Ms. City Attorney, when our mayor vetoes an item like this, the way he just did, are we allowed to still continue this conversation?
Well, there are 2 actions. Yes, I was just looking at your city charter. Your city charter allows the mayor to veto an item whenever action is taken by fewer than 5 votes. So if there's fewer than 5 votes, my understanding this was a 4-3 vote, so his veto authority applies. There is a process set forth in your municipal code that applies to vetoes, but that process applies when he is reviewing a resolution or an ordinance.
So he's allowed to make the comments right now after the veto then? I wanted to clarify.
Basically what he did is, remember, you have to look at the specific action. The vote that was taken was to table the item. Correct. Since that action was vetoed, there was no table, therefore you just continue to have the conversation as if the motion was never made. The motion can be made again if you have 5 votes to do it, then he would not have the ability to veto that.
Thank you.
Right. Councilmember Barr, thank you. Let's go back to Councilmember Nichols' question to the city attorney regarding what we're voting on, the legality of it, and please proceed, Ms. City Attorney.
So my understanding, if you look at the actual title of the resolution, it's declaring its intent to annex. So by taking this action, if you were to adopt this resolution tonight, what you're basically doing is announcing that it is the city's intention to move forward with an annexation process. By adopting this tonight, it would allow the developer to obtain the certificate of completion or compliance that it needs to go forward with its project.
Now, will that project property be annexed by us approving this resolution this evening? Will the project property?
Yes, the project property in essence will have completed the annexation process by getting this acknowledgement from the city because they will have satisfied the condition. LAPCO approved their annexation subject to the city adopting this resolution.
Exactly.
So if you do that, then you will effectively be helping them complete their conditions of approval.
And we will be obligated, once they complete their process, we will be obligated. That will be part of the city, right? The project property, not the donut hole. We still don't know what's going to happen, whether those voters approve of it or not. And from what I can see, I don't see this project moving forward unless we take some of those donut hole properties to allow secondary access. So congratulations, folks. If you vote for the resolution tonight, you have created a real mess for us.
So you're against progress and
I'm not against progress. All I'm asking the developer to do is to acquire the properties that are required to complete this.
Well, if they're not for sale, how can they get them if they're not for sale?
That's part of the development process, Fred. That's what developers do. They accumulate the properties they need to complete the development and not pass the buck to elected officials and taxpayers to sort out the mess that's created.
Sorry, you're wrong.
Okay, council members, we're here. I'm waiting to entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Move for approval of the staff recommendation, Mr. Charette?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Councilmember Mulvihill, if there's no further discussion, let's call the roll, please, Ms. City Clerk, on that motion and second.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
No.
Councilmember Ibarra,
No.
Councilmember Figueroa,
No.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
No.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, the motion does not pass. So
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 4, public hearing. This is a matter before the City Council. Public hearing on annexation number 2 to the Community Facilities District 2019-1, maintenance services for tax zone number 3. Adoption of resolutions for annexing into the Community Facilities District and first reading of an ordinance amending the ordinance levying special taxes for fiscal year 2020-21. The public hearing is to consider annexation proceedings of the elections for the City of San Bernardino. The public hearing is now open at 8:34 p.m. Are there any disclosures from City Council members regarding this matter? Madam City Clerk, did you have proof of publication that the notices as required by law have been given?
Yes, I do.
Do we have the complete file of exhibits, correspondence, and other documents?
Yes.
Are there any written communications on this matter?
No, there are not.
And will the staff please present and introduce yourself this report?
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm actually going to hand this over to Mr. Alex Kishta, our Deputy Director of Public Works, and he also has Mr. Shane Spicer from Spicer Consulting here with him tonight to answer any questions.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. The item for you tonight is the public hearing on annexation number 2 to Community Facilities District 2019-1. There is a few recommendations that we're requiring for tonight. The first is to hold a public hearing. The second is to adopt resolution number 2020-89 of the mayor and the city council of the city of San Bernardino, California, calling an election to submit to the qualified electors the question of levying a special tax within the area proposed to be annexed to Community Facilities District number 2019-1 Maintenance Services Annexation number 2, and hold a special landlord election and canvass the election. Adopt resolution number 2020-90 of the mayor and the city council of the city of San Bernardino, California, declaring election results for Community Facilities District number 2019-1 Maintenance Services Annexation 2. Introduce ordinance number MC 1536 of the mayor and the city council of the city of San Bernardino, California, amending ordinance number MC 1522 and levying special taxes to be collected during fiscal year 2020-2021 to pay the annual cost of the maintenance and servicing of landscaping, a reserve fund for capital replacement, and administrative expenses with respect to the city of San Bernardino Community Facilities District number 2019-1 Maintenance Services, and schedule the final reading and adoption of ordinance number MC 1536 for May 2020. With that, I have Shane Spicer of Spicer Engineering to go ahead and introduce the item and go through the staff presentation. Shane? Shane? Need to unmute himself.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council. As Mr. Keisha had mentioned, this item is the public hearing for annexation number 1 to the city's maintenance CFD 2019-1. A little bit of a background. The property owner has requested that the city assist them in annexing territory into the city's CFD to cover costs associated with the public improvements. The area proposed to annex into the maintenance CFD is APN 0141431-24, and it's within parcel map 19814. And its proposed developments to include approximately 1,065,000 square feet of industrial high cube logistic warehousing. The proposed maximum annual tax is $608 per acre, and will establish tax zone number 3 to the city's CFD. And the maximum tax is proposed to escalate at the greater of CPI or 2%, consistent with the other zone in the city's CFD. Next slide, please. So the services that are proposed to be funded are all those that are within the CFD's associated costs, maintenance cost categories, including the maintenance of landscaping and right-of-way in this specific CFD for the median right-of-way and landscaping, in addition to paying for the administrative and reserve funds. Next slide. This is a project location. Next slide. And the fiscal impact that is upon build out, it's anticipated that the approximate revenues to support the maintenance services would be $33,789. There is no fiscal impact to the city's general fund, and the developer has paid the associated costs borne for the annexation. So the recommendation in front of you, as previously mentioned, is to initiate the annexation of this proceeding, hold this public hearing, adopt said resolution, hold the election, adopt the resolution declaring the election results, and upon approval, preceding resolutions, introduce the ordinance, amending the ordinance, and schedule the final reading for May the 20th. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kishta. Does that conclude your staff report?
Yes, this is, yes, just to notice, I'm sorry, I just noticed there is a mistake, or it's on the title of this slide. It should be annexation number 2.
Correct.
Just to
Okay.
mention that. And we are more than happy to answer any questions if you guys have.
Thank you very much. We'll continue on. We will now receive comment from any persons in the audience, and I'm reading a script. So, Ms. City Clerk, are there any registered public comments, either on voicemail or via email on this matter?
No, there are not.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who has not spoken that would like to speak about the item? Ms. Rocha, if you could help me out on that. Do you see any more recent comments?
No.
It's odd, but I'm just trying to read the legalese here. Would city staff like to make any further comments, Ms. City Manager or any other city staff members?
Good, we're good.
No, thank you.
Okay, and do
We
any
adopt the
members?
resolution. Let's adopt the resolution.
Oh, okay, I appreciate that, Councilmember Mulvihill. Let me just continue. I have to read this long stuff. So thank you, Councilmember. We'll get to it in just a few seconds here. Do any members of the City Council have any questions for staff or wish to make any comments before I close the public hearing? Councilmember Ibarra.
Okay, just real quick question. How many acres is this property right now?
Alex, do you have that? I think that it was close to 56 acres. It's a vacant industrial property.
Okay, thank you. That is all.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other council members, I don't see anybody. I received, as a city clerk, receive written protest to any of the matters addressed in this public hearing from any registered voters or landowners of more than 50% of the acreage located within the property to be annexed as stated.
I have received 0 protest, written protest.
Thank you. I now declare this hearing closed, the time being 8:42 p.m. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the resolution of the Mayor and City Council calling an election to submit to the qualified electors the question of levying a special tax within the area proposed to be annexed to Community Facilities District number 2019-1, Maintenance Services Annexation number 2. Is there a motion? Councilmember Mulvihill?
I would like to move, Mr. Valdivia, that we approve the resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilmember Sanchez, thank you. Are there any other further discussions? Ms. City Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mayor?
Councilmember?
Just want to, so the public hearing will close on May 20th, right? How many properties are near this one parcel?
How many, I'm sorry, the question?
How many properties are within the close range of this property? Like how many people will be contacted to know about the public hearing going on?
Well, we usually go 500 feet of radius for all the properties. They all been noticed. They all been send notice for the annexation. Well,
And how many were there?
I don't have. Do you have that number, Shane?
This was noticed through the publication in the newspaper, and it is part of today is actually the public hearing. The meeting on the 20th is the second reading of the ordinance.
But how many people got noticed then?
The entire community
Which is how many?
in the public paper as part of the noticing requirement for annexation.
So no notices were sent to anyone in specific. It was just posted on the newspaper, correct?
So if I may, Councilmember Ibarra, so if you recall, this annexation is actually related to a property we spoke to council regarding changing the conditions of approval on this item from an LMD to a CFD. So at the time that we changed those conditions of approval, we did actually have the requirement to notify the properties within 500 feet of this property. And it was approximately 115 other property owners that were noticed for at that time when we changed the conditions of approval. This portion of the annexation into the CFD requires just what Shane is telling you, kind of the blanket public hearing notice to the public that we post in the paper. However, ballots were sent to the property owner that is for the property that's being annexed in, with the opportunity to either oppose that annexation or approve it. Or I think maybe it's just oppose it. It's a protest hearing. So in this case, the public hearing actually is concluded tonight. And then if the ordinance is adopted, we would come back for the second reading on the 20th of May.
Okay, nobody protested at all, because I know usually we have huge protests regarding big warehouses being built. So I just wanted to confirm.
Councilmember, the city clerk announced that there were no protests. She didn't receive any public comments. She's already made that clearly, abundantly clear. We're going to go ahead and take the vote. Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Just a quick question. So this is related to the most recent decision a couple of weeks ago, a couple of meetings ago, whenever that was, to change from a LMD CFD.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
I'm going to abstain.
Councilmember Figueroa,
I believe that this is an item that is the fruit of another item that was tabled and never decided by the council to be brought back. It was just brought back, so I'm going to be voting no.
Chris, you may want to clarify that.
Yeah, if I may, Councilmember Figueroa. So we actually, council had approved. This is the property on Waterman and East Orange Show Road, I believe it is. We had talked about the fact that the conditions of approval that were approved to be changed were so that we could include some right-of-way infrastructure, medians in particular, and items that extended beyond the kind of beyond the property to be included in the assessments so that ongoing maintenance was supported by that property. So we had actually brought this in front of council back on April 1st with a resolution of intention to annex that property into this maintenance CFD. So this really is step 2. This is the public hearing. That resolution was adopted by the council, though, on April 20th. It was not an item that was tabled.
So if I may interject for a second, I'm concerned that we have 2 council members here that aren't sure what they're voting on. So I read a very useful report from our consultants, from our public work consultants who drafted a report as to what the council was taking a decision on. So we're moving from a landscape district to a facility maintenance district, in which case the city will be able to make more money, or will be garnering more money to invest in streets, center medians, traffic lights, whatever upkeep needs to be done in the public right of way. This amendment to those terms of term or conditional terms, this amendment increases the amount of money that goes to the city to maintain these public right of ways. Am I correct?
If I may, Mayor Pro Temp, we're looking at approximately between 33 and 34,000 in revenue generating. I don't know if it's worth it, but I'll leave that to you guys.
Okay.
Worth it? It's already a property there. The property's already there. It's
All
whether
right.
we collect or not.
Okay.
Councilmember Sanchez, you bring a great point. This is more money than an LMD. Let's please continue with the roll call. Ms. City Clerk, if you could pick
And I
up where you left
completely
off,
understand.
I'd appreciate it.
Councilmember Figueroa,
And I understand that point. What I'm trying to say is that the previously alluded to item was originally tabled at one point and brought back without the council ever voting to untable it. So I'm still voting no.
Thank you, sir.
Point of clarification, staff. The original item was a different item, right? It was an LMD.
Correct. So what we spoke about originally was we had discussed the differences between.
I think we still need some clarity because I tend to agree with Mr. Figueroa that on the original item, yes, we did table that, but then we came back with this new concept which addressed the shortcomings that gave us pause when we were considering the original LMD item that we tabled. And I think we've addressed that in this item, if I'm not correct.
I believe at the April 1st meeting, we
I think it was before you were here when we first considered the item that we tabled, which Mr. Figueroa, I believe, is correct. But this is an entirely new item. Respectfully to my colleague, Mr. Figueroa, I completely agreed with you when we tabled that original item, but I think we've addressed the shortcomings of that original item with this, and that's why it was brought back, because it's a new concept. We're using a CFD, not an LMD.
Yes.
So I will support this item. I think it's a great. I think this resolved the concerns we had when we tabled the LMD item.
Okay, Ms. City Clerk, I'm going to ask the City Council. We have a script here. I respect your opinions, but the time we got to stay in conformity with the script. So the City Clerk, please continue to pick up where you left off on the registration of the votes for this item. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Charette.
Well, I have to, I'm going to make a comment. Number one is anything that's tabled can come back anyway. It doesn't have to have the approval of the city, of the council. And number two is we are not operating on a script, and we can discuss things, but my vote is yes.
Well, thank you, council member. And when I encourage you to speak up, that's the time, sir. So anyway, please continue, the City Clerk.
Councilmember Nickel.
Yes.
Councilmember Richard.
Yes.
Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, the resolution that we have just adopted calls for elections within the property to be annexed to CFD 2019-1 to approve such annexation and to authorize the levy of the special tax in accordance with the rate and method of apportionment to provide certain services within such property, which is to be held at this time by the City Clerk.
Okay, so all ballots have been cast in connection with the election for the CFD number 2019-1, and the election is now closed. Each of the ballot propositions have been approved by more than 2/3 of the votes cast in the elections for CFD number 2018-1.
Thank you. Having received a certificate of the City Clerk certifying the results of the election, I entertain a motion to approve a resolution of the Mayor and City Council of our city declaring the election results for Community Facilities District number 2019-1, Maintenance Services Annexation number 2. Is there a motion?
Move approve.
By Mulvihill, and a second by?
Second.
Councilmember Sanchez. Is there any further discussion? Now's the time to ask your questions. Okay, we're closing that portion. Ms. City Clerk, please call a roll.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
I'm abstaining.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
okay, Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you. I now ask for a motion to waive.
Excuse me, Mayor. I have a point of order question of the city attorney.
Go ahead,
Okay.
sir.
It is my understanding that a council member can change their vote on any item that they voted prior to the close of a meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, if you would have to bring, if you voted in the affirmative, you can bring, you can ask for a motion for reconsideration.
I want to change my vote on the tabling of item number, the annexation of the Spring Trails. I want to change there was a vote to table, and it was a 4-3 vote. And if I change my vote, it will be a 5-3. Is that correct? And that
5-2.
5-2.
And Fred, for clarification, it's to
table the item.
Technically, I know Councilmember May, but let me put this in. Okay, so are we done with item number 4, Mayor?
No, we're not done.
Okay,
No.
so let's wait for the completion of the item, and then we can address the council member's question.
I apologize. I thought we were done with that.
No, we're not. All right, let's continue on. Ms. City Clerk, where were we? Please, guys, let's continue with the roll call, and we can introduce the point of order I'll recognize you in a few seconds here, Fred, just a minute. Go ahead, Ms. City Clerk.
So we're not at the portion where I read the title of the ordinance, and then you will call for a motion on that item.
Okay, I now ask for a motion to waive further reading and introduce by title only an ordinance amending ordinance number MC 1522 and levying special taxes to be collected during fiscal year 2021 to pay the annual cost of the maintenance and servicing of landscape, a reserve fund for capital replacement, and administrative expenses with respect to City of San Bernardino Community Facilities District number 2019-1 maintenance services. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And is there any further discussion? Okay, Ms. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra,
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa,
Yes.
Councilmember Charette,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Yes.
Councilmember Richard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mulvihill.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, Ms. City Clerk, can you please clarify, let's go back to item number 3. There was lots of procedural moves here on move to table. Can you please call what was the tally? I'm asking your scorekeeping capabilities, please.
Mayor, if I may intervene, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I think I can make this fairly simple for you. The motion to table was vetoed by you. That means that the ability to have a conversation and to vote on the item remained available to the council. There was no action taken at all.
Correct.
In my opinion, there is no need to go back and reconsider a vote. You simply moved past that item because you did not have a vote. You did not have a new motion. My recommendation is you can go back to that item and you can entertain a new motion without even having to reconsider. They don't need to undo your veto in order to take action on that item.
I don't think, Mr. Charette, let me thank you, Ms. City Attorney, appreciate that. My question to Ms. City Clerk, there was a second motion made by who, and what was the tally on the record of that vote?
Okay, so the second motion that was introduced, you're referring to the one to table the item?
I'm referring to item number 3 on the Spring Trails annexation. My question to you, Ms. City Clerk, on the second time that it came before on a voice vote, what was the motion and what was the record of vote?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the beginning just so I make sure that I don't miss anything. The first motion that was introduced.
No, I understand the first motion. I just want to know the second motion and what was the vote and the tally of that vote.
It's the second motion was introduced by Councilmember Nichols, second by Sanchez, and the vote was?
And the motion was to move to table?
Yes.
Correct.
And so, give me one moment. So it was Councilmember Sanchez, Ibarra, Figueroa, and Councilmember Nickel that voted to table. So it was 4-3.
And the registered no votes were, my records were Basine, Fred, and Jim.
Correct.
Okay, and so the motion, technically, it was a motion to table. Is that right?
Yes.
And I didn't veto that second time. So now back to Mr. Charette. Your point of order, sir, is what? Unmute yourself. Fred, can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
I'm sorry. I thought you did vote vetoed tabling it, but I'll go with.
Not the second time, Fred. Only the first time.
I want to change. I did not vote to table it, and I want to change my vote to table it, which makes it a 5-2.
Okay.
But what I am trying to say,
Great.
council member, is that you don't have to go back procedurally and do that. If you want, there's been no action on this item.
The item essentially was tabled, Fred, so your vote doesn't help
Nope.
in any way, unless I veto it.
No, it wasn't tabled. I don't think.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't tabled. Okay.
No, it wasn't tabled. It failed.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Charette. We'll continue. We'll register your vote as you.
Mayor, this is a procedural matter. So let me just help you guys walk through this. There's no need to get excited. We can do this together. There was a vote to table the matter and you vetoed it. That meant that the table motion went away in essence, and then you had another discussion, right?
Correct.
Then a vote was taken, but there was no action on that vote because it failed. The city clerk announced that it failed. That leaves open the possibility for a new motion to be made. Now you are conducting a professional business meeting and we have gone past that item. If a council member wants to revisit that item, that council member would make a motion. Well, first of all, he could ask the chair as a courtesy if you'll go back to the item. If you don't do that, then the council member may make a motion. And if that motion passes, then you can go back and revisit that item.
That's my request, that we go back and visit that item so that I can change my vote and then make it and table the item.
It's already been tabled.
Well, okay, council, Mayor, will you accept the request from the council member?
Sure, Fred. It's already been tabled. I didn't veto the second time, but go ahead, Fred.
So now the item is back up for discussion and anyone now can make a motion.
I move to table the item.
I will second the motion to table.
All right. Thank you. Ms. City Clerk, for the third time, let's call a roll on a move to table.
What are you doing, Fred? You planning something? You're pulling some trick, aren't you?
Councilmember Sanchez.
Yes.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Yes.
Councilmember Charette.
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel.
Yes.
Councilmember Richard.
No.
Okay. Councilmember Mulvihill.
No.
Okay, the motion passes 5-2.
Okay, let's move on to item number 5. I think, Ms. City Clerk, we have you announced the results on item number 4, Ms. City Clerk?
So the result of the vote for the item, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Moving on to public hearing. Item number 5 on tonight's calendar, public hearing regarding fee adjustments for various city departments. And Ms. City Manager.
Mayor and council members, this is a very important item that is being brought to you this evening. It's been pending since 2014. Among several other items, updating our fee schedule is identified in the bankruptcy's plan of adjustment. It needs to be taken and steps need to be taken to secure the city's financial stability going forward. As you know, Rita Conrad was with us last year as interim finance director until we hired Paul Espinoza. And Rita came back this year to work in the city manager's office and help us with projects like this. So she's been working for months with the consultant to bring this project back to fruition. And I'm going to turn it over to her to let her give you the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Terry. Greetings, Mayor, Honorable Mayor, and Council members. It's very nice to see you again after all this time. If Mitch, if you could put up the PowerPoint. Thank you. So what you have before you today is a study to consider adjustments to user fees within the city. And as Terry just talked about, the city's plan of adjustment talked about reviewing all areas of revenue enhancement within the city, and part of that is our user fees to ensure that we're recovering costs that are allowable. And as Terry also told you, this started in 2014 at the same time that the city was drafting its plan of adjustment. And at that time, the city contracted with RCS, Revenue Cost Specialists, for them to prepare a cost of services study. Unfortunately, with the years following the bankruptcy, there was a lot of turnover in all city departments, and within the finance department, there have been since that time 5 finance directors between interims and permanents. So the study kind of languished. After a series of starts and stops, in December of 2019, this past December, we got together with RCS again and contracted with them to update the data, because we thought if we're going to bring this forward, we want to have the most current salary and benefit information. There's no sense bringing you a stale dated study. And then there's a lot of new people in the city, so we wanted to kind of just review the study again and make sure there wasn't anything that we were missing. So since December, we've been working on that. And I'd like to mention that both Rick Kermer and Eric Johnson of RCS are joining us on this call. So if you have any questions about the study at the end of the presentation, of them or of me, they're here available to answer those. If these recommendations are approved tonight, we're estimating conservatively that it could result in about $967,400 in new revenue for next year's budget. So really quick, what is a user fee? It's basically a fee that's charged to a customer or individual or an entity for something specific to them. They're getting a benefit out of it. So review of plans, recreation fees. It's not something that's provided to the community at large, like police services, which are funded by tax dollars. Next slide. With all types of user fees, the law says that we can't exceed the estimated reasonable cost of providing the service. So things that would be included in cost estimates are, of course, the direct time, salary and benefits, overhead, general overhead, city overhead, departmental overhead, and then any materials and supplies. The process involved all city departments. That's why it's a little labor intensive. RCS met with departments, met with numerous members of the finance department. City departments and the finance department provided them with a lot of data on revenues and salary and benefits. With this information, RCS prepared a cost allocation study and a schedule of fully burdened hourly rates for all budgeted positions in the city. This data then was used to complete their cost of services study. And there's 2 ways of looking at when you're trying to determine what the cost of services are. There's the individual unit level spent on a task, where basically you talk to staff involved in providing a service, find out how much time they spend on that, and then you develop what that cost is based on their fully burdened rate. For some programs in the city, especially like building and safety fees, where there's so many combinations of fees, there's schedules that you look at based on square footage, project valuation, you can't really do that. So you look at it on a programmatic level, how much revenue we brought in, what are we spending on that, and are we recovering our cost on a programmatic level or not? So normally with user fees, because of specific entity or person or individual is getting a specific benefit, we recommend 100% cost recovery. But there are some programs where 100% cost recovery isn't feasible, and it shouldn't be, but there's sometimes a thought that it should be. Things that go into those kind of decisions are the demographics of the community. Is there other benefits that come about from having those services, a public safety element? Are we trying to change behavior? Market conditions play into that a little bit. We do look at comparables sometimes, but comparables are really just a secondary factor because the law says we can only recover our cost. So you might see other cities where their user fees are much higher and wonder why ours aren't that high. Well, our costs are on the lower side because of budget reductions and cuts in staff. So we can only recover what we spend. And then there's community and council priorities. So when RCS completed their cost of service study, they identified potentially 1.3 million in additional revenue. So then we looked at the study, and as you know, this was done, a lot of it was done before the COVID-19 shutdown impacts. So with that, considering that, we lowered the projected revenues on average about 20% to be conservative. So like I said, the economic downturn, we should be conservative in our approach. I think the city manager and finance department will be coming back to you in September before mid-year to kind of evaluate where we are given this unique set of circumstances. And then at that time, if fees are doing better, we can increase projections. If things haven't turned around, that'll be a whole nother conversation, but we took a conservative approach. Also, fees won't be effective for a full year, 11 months only. So we lowered that because RCS is estimates based on a full year. And then some fees are dependent upon staffing levels. And last year, when we were facing a rather large budget deficit, a lot of cuts were made in various departments. Code compliance is one of them. So for some of their fees, I lowered the revenue projections, reflecting that, knowing that a lot of that depends on staff. That doesn't mean we lowered the fee, but it just means we're lowering the revenue projection. There are a few fees you'll see on it throughout the study, not very many, but a few that there was a downward adjustment. Usually that's because staff times may be spent in other areas. We haven't done a fee study of building and safety since 2008 and all other fees since 2009. So sometimes there's a realignment that way. There could be changes in laws or regulations where the amount of time is not required on certain tasks. Sometimes changes in technology make the process of carrying out that service less expensive, and then also changes in staffing level. So this is just a quick summary of potential revenue by department. And you can see the big departments are Public Works and Community and Economic Development. Those departments are heavily fee driven, so that's why you would see a much bigger rate of potential revenue, where the smaller departments, they might have a doubling of some fees. You know, for example, a swim pass might go up from, I'm trying to think, maybe from $3 to $5. So it's a big increase in terms of percentage, but it doesn't really generate a lot of additional revenue. So again, all the data is in the study. It's a lot of material, and then we summarized it also with staff comments in attachment 1. I'm just going to point out some of the fees where we're not really recommending 100% cost recovery, or if there's anything different about the fee that I think you should be aware of. So for the library, right now, fees only fund about 2.3% of library operations. We got feedback from library staff, and also the library board recently approved a fee schedule. So the balance between higher fees, there's a balance between higher fees that will discourage use and cost recovery. There's a benefit to the community overall for having a library amenity. So these are things that are taken into consideration. You can see if we're only recovering 2.3%, there's no way we would ever try to reach 100% or even 50%. The cost would be not sustainable in this community. And this is pretty typical in most municipalities. Animal control is the other big one. The RCS, the consultant, they didn't make a recommendation for specific fees because, again, this is like library. They told us what our costs are for operating the animal control function in the shelter and all that's done there. But 100% cost recovery is not feasible and is not the goal. So staff has made a recommendation to increase fees to achieve 15.6% recovery. And again, a lot of that's detailed in an attachment. We work very closely with the police department. The police department did a comprehensive study, Captain Hernandez, thank you. And in this case, we did look at also surrounding agencies. We want to make sure that we're encouraging compliance. We don't want our fees to be so high that folks don't adopt kitties and puppies from other shelters. We want them to adopt from our shelter. So there's a lot of things that go into those, determining those levels of fees. And then Parks and Recreation is similar to library. Overall, if you just look at Parks and Rec overall, 4% of the Parks and Recreation budget is covered with fees, which is pretty typical. That's not including grant revenue. At the program level, where like youth sports or swim programs, that kind of thing, cost recovery ranges anywhere from 3.6% to about 30%. Again, we had to weigh the community benefit to having park amenities and programs, having participation. There's a value to the community to have these programs available to folks and youth in our community. So the approach isn't really to try to get a really high level of cost recovery, but we were just trying to keep up more with the inflation, looking at our fully burdened hourly rates and those kind of things. Not really changing the structure. Police department overall, they are not fee driven. They're considered a public benefit service funded with general fund tax dollars. But in some situations, there are user fees where a specific person or entity is getting specific benefit, for example, live scan processing request. In these kind of cases, we do recommend 100% cost recovery. One of the new fees or it's not really a fee, but a new charge that we're recommending is for extraordinary law enforcement services. We, again, worked closely with the police department, and they did a study looking at what other law enforcement agencies charge when they provide extraordinary law enforcement, like, for example, to the Yarn Show. And we were only charging direct time plus a benefit rate of about 4.9%, I believe. So we're looking at charging a 20% overhead administration fee of 20%, which is well within the range of what entities are used to dealing with law enforcement to try to recover some of those costs. And next slide. The other thing I want to note is the alarm permit program. RCS developed a fee structure to obtain 100% recovery, which is their job to show us what the cost of providing a service is. However, when we look at that, 100% cost recovery would quadruple the alarm permit charges. And again, when you do something like that, you're going to lose participation and kind of lose what is the overall goal of the program in the first place. So this is another area where staff reviewed fees of surrounding cities, and we recommended an alternative fee structure where we're recommending the permit itself not be as high as what RCS is recommending, but then we have kind of a progressive structure for false alarms where we're trying to encourage not to happen. Permit holders get the first 2 false alarms free, but then it goes up incrementally. Non-permit holders, it's a much higher fee, and that's also outlined in attachment 1. Then community and economic development. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, a lot of their fees are based on project valuation. So cost recovery does vary from year to year. So it's beneficial to look at it over a multi-year arc to see if overall, maybe in a 3-year period, are we recovering our costs because of timing differences. So we're close to full recovery. Part of that, again, is that we've had a lot of cuts over the years, budget challenges. So the cost to provide services is fairly low. And again, we can only charge the reasonable estimated cost of our services. We're recommending that we update the IBC valuation table. It's a table that's used in determining fees. The one that's in the last fee resolution is from 2008. Standard practice in most agencies is to update it semi-annually when it comes out twice a year. And then we've updated fully burdened hourly rates. And one thing I want to also mention is that our Community and Economic Development Director did reach out to the BIA to get their feedback. And they didn't provide any comments. What we have heard from the development community is that there might be some acceptance of higher fees for better service, which if the council were to make that decision down the road, we should update the fee study to show that, because if we're going to add staff or new software or whatever it is we would do to enhance service, that could be built into the fees. But that seems to be kind of thought from some developers that, this isn't really going to raise our fees a lot, and they'd really like to see a quicker turnaround. The other one new fee is a general plan maintenance fee of 2% on building and safety fees. This is to set aside funds just for this purpose, for amendments to the general plan or maintenance to the general plan, and then build a fund for when the general plan needs to be overhauled. We have some grant money right now, but this is a typical fee that most cities have, so that there is money set aside when the time comes. So I kind of talked about the things on here on the last slide. So we can go to the next one. Jumped ahead of myself. Then Public Works, they're also very fee driven. Not a lot of big changes, except that because they are fee driven, a lot of their costs are covered with fees. That's why you see the bigger number, where basically we updated the fully burdened hourly rates and time associated with each service, but really not a lot of structural changes or anything of that nature. So the next steps would be after this public hearing is closed, if the recommendations are approved by you tonight, then we would incorporate those into resolutions and come back on May 20th with the resolutions to approve these fees and get those implemented within about 60 days. And again, approval of these fees conservatively estimated at about $967,000 for next year's budget. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Conrad. We appreciate your hard work and your diligence in preparing this. I know this has been, in talking with our city manager, we have been waiting this almost 2.5 to 3 years, if not longer. And we appreciate your expertise and your diligence, and we thank our finance team for assisting in all of this. We'll open it up to comments or questions. Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion. But council members, Councilmember Surratt.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure this is the right time for the question. It might be for our budget hearings coming up. Because I wanted the city clerk's office is responsible for business registration, right?
Finance. It's now.
Okay. Yeah, it used to be city clerk, but finance is now. Is that covered? Is that a fee in here? And what I guess that's not a fee.
No, it's considered a tax, really. So it's not
tax. Do you have? And I'm sorry to hit you from left field. Do you happen to know what the revenue is on business registration fees? And if it's not really relevant or germane to this discussion, because it's not a fee, it's a tax, we can talk about it later. But I do want to make sure that we're collecting as much. I want to know what we're doing in business registration.
I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, Councilmember Surratt, our finance director is on the line. He can get that information for you.
Well, I can probably wait until our budget discussion, because it's really not. So I don't think it's germane to this conversation. And I think the other thing to just kind of get on the record is our utility tax is a tax, and I would like to know, and I'm just giving you maybe a little heads up. You can do some research for our budgeting. How that's impacting our utility users tax, solar, that is, how solar is impacting our utility taxes. So that's just for down the road during our budget discussions.
Certainly.
Okay, Councilmember Mulvihill.
Other than that, I'll move approval.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mulvihill.
Thank you. I just recently found out that we have a police officer stationed at St. Bees Hospital and also Community Hospital. Are they compensating us fully for those?
Yes, they are. The council's approved an agreement for both of those. Yes, they are.
They're paying us for them?
Yes, interim Chief McBride is on the line, I believe. Yes, the council's approved agreements with both hospitals for 2 full-time officers.
Yes, but are the hospitals paying us the cost recovery for them?
Yes.
Yes, that went before the city council last year, and I think it was unanimous. You voted to approve that, and they do pay the fully burdened rate for both officers.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Nichol.
Yeah, I'm still trying to sort out the logic behind some of what you talked about on the fee structures. So in other words, our fees are lower because we don't provide the same level of service. But my argument is by providing a fee that provides for actual cost recovery, we can actually then start providing the services to a level that we would expect and want. So for instance, inspection fees. I mean, we crime-free housing. Is that something that we can address and improve upon and have more inspections and better inspections?
Yeah.
Does that mean we have to invest in doing better inspections and hiring more people before we can then go back and revisit and acquire full cost recovery? I'm lost. I would assume we could build up some of these services and justify the fee based on the cost to ramp up these types of services and inspections that we have to do to provide the service that people expect.
Let me try to answer that for you, because it is kind of which comes
chicken
first.
Or the egg. It's kind of a chicken or the egg.
Yes, chicken or the egg. Exactly.
You can't run a business that way. You can't charge people, eat your cost and charge people later for the cost of what it.
I think the answer is that if you wanted, let's say, for example, building and safety, if you wanted to look at enhancing that, you would come back with a proposal. Community and economic development would come back with a proposal of adding staff to the council or whatever they would need to add to enhance service. And then we would show how that could generate additional revenue by doing that. Because
I think it really troubled me when you said, well, the reason our fees are so lower than other cities is because we don't provide the same level of service. I'd say, well, we can't provide the same level of service because we don't charge the fees necessary to recoup the cost.
And that's it exactly. And I think when you're looking at budget reductions and that kind of thing, you need to look at those strategically. Are you reducing areas where they generate revenue? And kind of
I'd be interested in kind of looking at how our fees actually do compare. Because I think this gets to a bigger discussion that we're going to need to have during this budget, because we're going to be hurting on revenue this year, folks, and we've got to think really critically about not only cost recovery but how we recoup for some of the significant reductions in sales tax we're going to see over this next budget year. And I appreciate the work you did. I'm going to support the motion, but I think this actually raised a lot more questions with me tonight. And I think we got a lot more work to do on this front, but I appreciate the work you did. And I'll be coming back to this in budget time to see what else we can do to shore up our revenues and cost recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Ibarra.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start off by thanking Ms. Rita and Paul for this report. So since 2008, we've been waiting to do this. And I'm glad that you came on board to help us get through it. Going on the same lines that my colleague, Councilmember Nichol mentioned, it's time that we revisit the fees that we have. I know recently we adjusted the fees for the fireworks that are being lit up. We compared the numbers to what other cities in the area are charging for fines. I think that would be a good starting point. I appreciate you including the numbers for the animal shelter. We haven't had an active adoption day since, I want to say, maybe last March or this past March. And maybe us as legislators, we can look into possibly creating a program. And this is something that LA County is doing. It's very successful. They do something called short-term fostering, where just a random volunteer in the community fosters a pet for 2 weeks, and all they're doing is putting pictures and videos all over social media, and it encourages people to adopt those animals. You know, instead of euthanizing them, it'd be nice to give them that opportunity to be socialized for LA County's doing for 2 weeks. And that's something that I took away from a meeting that I went to recently. So maybe that's something that we can discuss in the near future. And I do want to encourage near future, not 10 years from now, but now. So thank you for putting that part of the animal shelter. And also, on page 18 of your PowerPoint, you're saying that you are going to be recommending that we have an update of this semi-annually. Is this something that the staff will be automatically updating us on, or is it something that the council needs to request from staff in order to make sure that we do get those reports?
Let me clarify that because I might have been a little fuzzy on that. The only thing that's going to be updated pertains to just community and economic development. And it's just, there's a table that shows construction values that's used in determining building and safety fees and agencies. It's a common practice. And the IBC, International Building Code, updates that twice a year. So we're just recommending that we automatically do that because that's a standard practice to do that anyway.
Okay, yeah, and yes, I'm sorry I didn't point out that it was community and economic development. And going off of that, we were talking about crime-free housing. I think right now we're charging, I believe, $100 for the multi-housing when they register to be a part of that program. Maybe we can look at what other cities charge as well and up it up a little bit, especially when we have what they call the bad landlords out there that they don't maintain their properties, and it brings the community quality of life down. So definitely, I look forward to readjusting a lot of these fees and fines so we can start getting over all the cutting that we're doing in our budget. So thank you, Ms. Rita and Paul.
So the Ms. Conrad, just my observation really on packet page 143, library was the lowest to increase their fees. I know that you've done some great work already, but I would consider that that's probably, there's more opportunity there to increase those fees in our library area. And also the Parks and Rec, there's a lot of opportunity here, especially if we were to utilize more of the Quimby Act and parkland fees to augment some of, supplement, if that's available and not restricted under Prop 218, to transfer some of that monies for cost recovery to our general fund. Also regarding police on page 143, it goes on. I don't see anything really pertaining to the parking control or ticketing of, so maybe in your analysis, you could continue to look at that opportunity to increase either the street sweeping would be an opportunity maybe in Public Works, or to interface the police department on that fee study as we move towards a cleaner street. We want to emphasize the no parking areas, and I'm sure there's some growing sentiment from our city council members. So I don't know if you want to bundle that in Public Works or more park or police, but that's an opportunity. And finally, community economic development, they of course represent the lion's share of the fees, and that's something Public Works and community development both almost clearly the lion's share, about $700,000 of the $967,000. So good work there, and we appreciate it. We'll open it up to any other council members. There's a motion by Fred and a second.
So just
Henry, is that right?
I'll second if nobody seconded it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just a quick comment.
Councilmember Sanchez,
so
please go ahead.
I applaud the updates to this. I think that along with the good actors and the participants in our community who will now be paying just to recoup the city's cost for providing these services, I think it would be prudent of the council to also direct staff, and I will do that at the end of this council meeting, to direct staff to take a look at the municipal code and see updates that we can make to the bad actors that drain a lot of the services that the city has to provide in public safety, in code enforcement. So at the end of this council meeting, I hope I can get the support of my colleagues that we also update the fines and fees charged to these bad actors who are, again, draining a lot of the city's resources. So I will be doing that at the end of the council meeting. And I'm very happy to be able to support this.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, Ms. Conrad.
Just want to add the points that you make about parking fees and those kind of things. You're right; those weren't a part of this study. They're covered under a different resolution. They're kind of handled differently, but we can work with the city manager's office and bring that back at a later date as a separate item.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other council members? There's a motion and a second. How about this? Any objections? I think it's unanimous. Perfect. All right, let's move on to the next item, consent calendar. We will pull the council members. This is a consent calendar. Thank you, Ms. Conrad. We appreciate you. Ms. Ledoux.
Mayor, I was asked if I could pull number 8 from the calendar and do an oral report.
Okay, sure.
The status on the investigation.
Sure. Why don't we go ahead and do that real quick? Go ahead.
Certainly. This matter pertains to the investigation of allegations that have been made concerning the mayor. When the allegations of harassment are made, conducting a thorough investigation is not only critical, it's required. The California Fair Employment and Housing Act imposes an affirmative legal obligation to employers to take all reasonable steps necessary to prevent the discrimination and harassment from occurring in the workplace. Additionally, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission also imposes a duty to employers to investigate complaints of harassment. As such, the city retained an independent investigator on February 20th of this year to investigate allegations of harassment made by current and former employees of the mayor's office. The independent investigator engaged by the city to handle this case has worked diligently to identify and interview witnesses and review available evidence. The investigator has made significant progress with this investigation despite numerous challenges. To date, the investigator has only had the opportunity to interview one of the individuals who has made complaints against Mayor Valdivia. While the remaining complainants have been invited to participate in the investigation, they refuse to be interviewed by the investigator, even with their attorney present. Consequently, the investigator must rely on claims themselves, news articles, statements made during press conferences, and verbal accounts by the complainant's attorney to determine what the complainants are alleging. Since late February, the investigator has interviewed other staff members in the offices of the mayor, city council, city manager, and human resources department. The investigator has scheduled an interview of another party for next week and will be working to secure another interview with the new claimant. Based on the information received in the interview and any additional claims that are filed, the investigator may request interviews with additional parties. Once these steps are complete, the investigator will prepare a report regarding the various claims. The city will continue to provide the investigator with any information required to complete this investigation as quickly as possible, but also afford the investigator the time reasonably needed to complete a thorough and independent investigation. Once the progress is completed, the findings will be provided to the city council. The cost incurred by the city in association with the engagement of the independent investigator and outside special counsel for handling the investigation through April 30th is $51,762. There is no action requested at the city council this evening. This item was prepared to provide you with an update on the investigation. However, staff will be requesting additional funding from the city council at a future meeting as the investigation continues. And that concludes my update.
Thank you, Ms. Ledoux. Any questions from city council members on this particular matter? Okay, we will, thank you, Ms. City Manager. We will continue with the consent calendar. We'll poll all council members for their polls if they have any.
I did have one question, Mayor. I'm sorry I didn't have my button pressed.
Yes, Councilmember Nichols.
Just what do we anticipate the timeline just for the public's information? What's the anticipated timeline in terms of when the council anticipates getting this report back? And just how much is this thing going to cost us when it's all said and done? Do we have any sense when we're going to get it and how much it's going to cost us?
Actually, we don't, Councilmember. As you know, we received a new claim last week, so that continues to be ongoing. We don't have an idea of when it will be complete. We're hoping soon. We're hoping we're towards the end of it.
So soon, a month, 2 months?
Sonia, I don't know if you have any input on this. We've asked our legal representative.
I mean, people constantly ask me. I have no answer.
And I'm constantly asked as well.
As the council knows, the council did receive an update in closed session this evening. The information that was discussed in closed session is confidential. If you wanted that information, I would suggest you seek that specific information from your special legal counsel who's representing you in this case.
Can we at least give a sense of when the public can anticipate the council may receive a final report on the investigation? Is there anything we can let the public know, at least on the timeline? Obviously not the content, not the findings, but at least when we anticipate this thing might be wrapped up? And how much it's going to cost the taxpayers when it's all said and done? Can we share that?
Yeah, Mayor and council members, I am not at all trying to not answer your question directly, but as you know, we are not handling the case. It is not my case, so I can't tell you. I know some of you asked questions of your special legal counsel this evening, and if any of you want to repeat the answers to those questions that you received in closed sessions with the approval of your colleagues, you can answer those types of questions. I'm not handling the matter, and that's Mr. Tiedemann's case at this moment.
Okay, so staff can't provide us with any information regarding time or cost. It's up to the council members to provide that information.
No, what I'm just trying to say is that you received some answers to those questions this evening.
Yeah.
You
well,
guys
I think I'm a little reluctant for council members to disclose that. I would think that at least time and cost, staff could provide some insight to that.
All I'm saying is that I am not your attorney on this matter. You have an attorney-client privilege with your special legal counsel. If you guys want to waive that privilege, you can have that conversation. I just don't believe that it's
that information
my
the city
place
manager? Could the city manager share time and cost information?
I don't believe our special counsel gave us a time and cost in our closed session, so there's nothing to repeat. We've asked him repeatedly if he has an estimate, and he does not. He does not know.
That answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may.
Councilman Charette, yes.
I understand what's going on here. Closed session is very, very private and very, very for good reason. But the public continues to see claims and see things and wonder what's going on here. And I agree with my colleague, Mr. Nickel, that I'm certainly not wanting to violate closed session and say the wrong thing or say something that's going to put us in any kind of jeopardy or add fuel to the fire. But we need, I was contacted by a few people about the fact that this item was put on a consent calendar, number one, which the public looks at us like, oh, you're just burying this in the consent calendar. It's going to get approved, without any discussion whatsoever. And in fact, I think I'll just say it. I contacted city manager on that, and I said this is inappropriate, and she agreed to pull it and give a report. But it's a written report that we just read, and the public, I don't believe, is going to be satisfied. No, I'm not disparaging you, Terry, for the report. You're reading a report that we all read, and it's available to the public because it was on the agenda. But the public wants to know more about what's going on. They want to know more about what's going on with our leadership in the community. And it's very disturbing for me to try to follow the rules of closed session and confidentiality and what have you when the public is clearly asking for the mayor to step aside. Now they're asking for Figueroa to step aside. Now they're asking for Ibarra to step aside or to resign. I'm not real. happy to be in the position I am as a colleague on this council. And I understand the legal and I understand the personnel, but the citizens are the ones that hired us, are the ones that are paying the tab, and they need more information. And I'm trying to make a statement to them tonight to tell them that we're somewhat hamstrung on what we can say and what we can't. But there's a lot of attention going to this, and as I said, I wake up almost in cringe to open up the Sun Telegram or the Sun newspaper every morning because of fear of some new allegation or some new information. And the public is not happy. The public is not happy with us as a council, as a body. They're not happy with what's going on with our leadership and with us as a body in the city.
I would like to comment.
Go ahead.
So we do have a right to attorney-client privilege, but we can suspend that right. I think that was made clear to us by our legal counsel. And so we can discuss those answers that were given to us on the questions we're asking right now here in public session. Now that would, I think, be up to the whole council. We would have to, correct me if I'm wrong, Miss City Attorney, but I do believe that the council would have to vote on that as a whole as to whether we want to suspend that privilege. Am I correct in assuming that?
Correct. That's right. The council holds that privilege on behalf of the municipal entity. Yes.
Because unfortunately, it does look in many cases, and we have been accused of conducting a cover-up here. And I can assure you that that is not the case at all. But a lot of us do feel hamstrung by some of the rules we've imposed on ourselves. So if we do feel compelled to open up about this, I think now would be the time for the council to vote to suspend that privilege.
If I may, I'd be very careful about suspending that privilege.
I have a comment.
By the way, I agree with you, by the way, but we don't want to damage the city's position.
There you go.
I would vote against it, but I mean, I know that people keep on saying.
Individuals on this council that are being claims against, and that their behavior and what they've done or didn't do or whatever, what they've been accused of, lumps us in with them. And we've got to protect the city. And it's not easy to do in this case. It's just not easy to protect the city taxpayers in this case because we have some obligations. I just say that because Theodore, I think I tend to agree with what you're saying, but it's a tough decision to jeopardize our case in the future based on comments that we maybe should or shouldn't be making.
This is one of those very difficult situations where we are in a difficult predicament, but I think we all swore to the protection of the city, all the council members, all my colleagues. And as such, I would have to make that difficult decision that we continue to evoke that privilege and remain quiet, but understand and hope that the public now hears us, that we are keeping a very close eye on this and that it isn't being covered up. I can give you nothing more than my word. And I know that all the other council members are doing the same, but you're going to have to take our word on that for us, because I do believe that we would be hurting the city if we suspend that privilege. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you for the report. Let's proceed on to our consent calendar. Councilmember Sanchez, do you have any items to pull tonight?
No items to pull.
Thank you. Councilmember Barra.
Just a clarification on number 11.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Number 11 as well.
Okay. Councilmember Charette.
No, I have none.
Councilmember Nicole.
Item 20.
Councilmember Richard.
None.
And Councilmember Mulvale.
I have none. Move the balance.
Is there a second?
Second.
With Henry as a second. And if there's no objections? No objections?
No.
All right, so ordered. We have consensus on the balance. We'll go to council members who have pulled their items. We'll begin on item number 11. This is Councilmember Ibarra and Councilmember Figueroa. You both have pulled the item. Item number 11 is a resolution authorizing the issuance of purchase order for unmarked police vehicles. Councilmember Ibarra, please go ahead.
Yes, I believe last year around this time, we had approved unmarked police vehicles, and I just want a clarification from Acting Chief McBride, why the additional purchases? And what happened to the vehicles we purchased last year? Just that.
Good evening, Mayor and Common Council. So let's take you back to last year when you approved that we had just restructured the police department and we stood up some specialized units. So that original purchase last year of some unmarked vehicles were for the purposes of the other unit that we established. These vehicles are needed for our undercover BICE unit. So we just did finally able to stand up that unit. Some of you may be aware that we've been doing out a lot of programs out there already in the community to combat our human trafficking problem that we have. And this is a needed piece of equipment for those units to be able to go into those areas covertly. And so they need these unmarked vehicles.
Okay, and so we have proper staffing for the teams that you created, correct?
I wouldn't have purchased the vehicles if I didn't have the staff that needed them.
Thank you.
Councilmember Figueroa.
Thank you. This is an item that I have a difficult time with, not necessarily because I disagree with the use or the need. I actually do support that. What I do have a difficult time with is where the vehicles are being purchased. You know, many of the businesses in our city are hurting right now. They're struggling. And to take almost $100,000 to purchase 4 vehicles in the city of Ontario when we have multiple options here in the city of San Bernardino to purchase these vehicles is what I have a difficult time with. And so I'll be voting no on that.
Thank you very much. Staff care to respond to that?
So this is a process we go through. We've found that CarMax is very user-friendly. We have gone to Ford. I think a couple years ago we did go to Ford, but when we get the list from them of the used vehicles, we don't have access to see what the vehicle looks like. And in many cases, these are cars that are available nationwide. So when we inquire about a car, oftentimes we find that vehicle is missing or it's gone. It's already been sold. CarMax, we can go online, we can view the vehicle in question, and once we select it, it's ours. And plus, previously, that we didn't get a warranty along with those vehicles. So the vehicles from CarMax have very low miles, and so if they already or are still under warranty, that warranty is extended to us, whereas that previously wasn't the case. So this is a better situation for the city. We're getting low mile cars, plus the opportunity to assume a warranty that benefits the city as well.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Councilmember Barr, yes.
Yeah, going off on that, Eric, is there any way we can look at I think what my colleague is mentioning, maybe or making reference is we have car shops in my area along E Street. What has that, what kind of experience have you had with those dealerships, car dealers that we've had?
Typically, those car dealerships that I think you're probably referring to on E Street are the used car lots. Those are typically very high mileage cars. A lot of them are not something that we're going to be able to use for a long time. They may have maintenance issues because they're their mileage and stuff like that. So we're getting vehicles that are low mileage that are going to be able to hold up for quite a bit of time.
Okay, so it's just because of the how much time we'll have them for. But when it comes to serving or going undercover for prostitution, for example, do you really need a high functioning vehicle, a long lasting vehicle for that? I just thought I'd ask that question. I mean, is there
these vehicles
racing involved?
These vehicles are going to be equipped with safety equipment to make traffic stops and stuff like that. So they need to be vehicles that are going to hold up. These aren't necessarily being done to, for example, an undercover capacity to solicit someone who's being trafficked. These are going to be for surveillance purposes. And sometimes they're utilized to make traffic stops. So they got to have that safety equipment. They got to be able to hold up. and we got to have reliable, good equipment for our employees.
I do believe that our police department is in the business of saving lives and is in constant danger. The last thing we would want is for one of these cars to break down in the middle of a situation where people's lives are in danger. So I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more with the police department's decision to try to get the most reliable vehicles that they can get their hands on.
Is that a motion for approval, Councilmember?
I move to approve that.
Thank you.
I'll second it with a quick comment. and
All
that
right,
is-
Mr. Charette.
Thank you. And my comment is simply that I agree with my colleagues that if we can ever buy locally, we should, and I think we do, and I think we make every attempt in humanly possible to support our local vendors, businesses, and what have you. But you just can't always. Certain companies that provide certain types of services and things don't happen to be in our city. Let's see if we can't get CarMax to build a big old, probably some of our car dealers wouldn't like that, but we'd like to have a CarMax in our community. And I get it. So I do support this. And of course I've seconded it and I will be supporting it. I appreciate what you're doing.
Okay, thank you,
Maybe
Councilman.
just a sales office.
All right, let's if there's no objections, I think we have one stated by Councilman Figueroa.
Just to tack on to that, I believe that, and I don't know this for a fact, but I believe that maybe perhaps Enterprise offers a similar option that CarMax does. I don't know that for a fact, but it would be worth exploring.
Okay, Councilmember, we will register your no vote. Is that still your sentiment, Mr. Figueroa? Okay, are there any others objecting to this? If not, Councilmember Barra?
I'll object, but if they want to come back and maybe ask for money after they research Enterprise and compare it to
Okay,
CarMax.
hold on, Councilmember Barra. You're registering a note on this vote?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Let's, with those objections, let's continue to move on, and the item passes. The item passes. All right, moving on to item number 20. Councilmember Mulvihill, sir, you're recognized.
That's right. I think that was my item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Nickel, I apologize.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank staff for putting this together. And I got a couple questions from constituents. Algoin Park, as some of you may or may not know, is kind of a unique area right adjacent to a freeway. It's where our Vermont Community Center is located on our soccer fields. And so a couple questions were raised to me. First of all, the nature of the funding being used on this, we do appreciate it. But also, I know there have been discussions in the past about perhaps alternative future uses for that site, adjacent soccer fields. Question was raised, is that where we really want to put this equipment, or maybe think about some of our other park facilities in Vermont? But maybe staff can just refresh all of our memories of why this park was chosen and what funding is being used. I support it, but I did want to get those questions answered by the constituents that raised them. So is Jim available to answer any questions on that one?
Actually, this is the Public Works item. They're now overseeing parks maintenance.
Not even parks. Wow. Okay.
But Jim does know his parks.
Okay, so it's Public Works. Okay, this is interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so Public Works paying for playground equipment.
Well, we're trying. Councilmember Nickel, thank you very much. And actually, we do this stuff in partnership with Jim,
Sure.
our Parks and Rec director. So this park in particular, the city had approved some projects for the replacement of playground equipment through CDBG funding at parks that were eligible for those projects. Being the area that this is in, this was not one of those parks. However, the council had added this project to the capital improvement plan. I believe it was back in probably 1819 and then carried into 1920. So we've been very busy, as you can imagine, with all of the CIP projects going on. Finally, we're able to get this out to bid. What you've got in front of you tonight is the request for award of construction of a playground area, kind of a tot lot for that park. The park does have a few amenities. It's got some basketball courts, it's got some shade structures and picnic tables from what I understand, but there really isn't any facilities for smaller children. And based on my conversations with the Mr. Tickmeyer, we talked about how much use that park actually gets when the soccer tournaments are going on at the property nearby. And so this is why the park was chosen. This is why this type of equipment was chosen. Originally, council had approved some funding towards the project. As we're finding with everything, the bids are coming back higher than we had originally estimated. So what we had asked for, we initially had some of the park funds allocated to the project, and we are looking at using some of the Quimby Act Parkland funds to make up the difference on the project.
And what would those Quimby Act funds be used for otherwise?
So my understanding here in San Bernardino, and someone correct me if I've been misguided, but the Quimby fees are usually paid by developers in lieu of land being dedicated for parks and their developments. And those fees can be used for expansion of park facilities. You can buy additional land elsewhere. You can also provide new recreational features that expand the recreational activities or capacity for activity at existing parks, which that is what this is doing. This is bringing a new recreational feature to the park.
Okay, so the total is $240,000.
It was actually 241, and that includes the construction, the contingency amount, and then some staff time for engineering and inspection.
Okay. And has there been any public input on the nature of that playground, just to make sure it's, it's something that, is consistent with some of the interests and desire of the community around it?
So in my short time here, this was kind of already established, but if Alex is still hanging out there, we can talk to Alex, or Jim actually might have some information as well.
Yeah, I can add some substance to the conversation. I know that there's been in the past there was discussion and talk that the park wasn't used as frequently, and that there was, because of the location, that it might not actually even be the best place for that park. But I can tell you, council member, that as you've met our staff up there and seen the outreach that they've done, we're continually seeing more use and more attendance at the community center that's there. So much so that we've had to recently acquire some portable outdoor sports activity type things and move some of our programming outside because of the capacity of the building that's there. We're regularly exceeding that capacity. We had 85 kids registered in our 2-week summer program that was up there, our summer camp program. So the activity up there warrants an investment in some additional activities, additional equipment up there. And I'm sure you've seen the activity at the soccer complex on the weekends. You've got, you'll have thousands of people there on a Saturday and Sunday, and only half of which are playing in those soccer tournaments. And that leaves a good portion of the family that still needs some recreational activity, basketball courts, playgrounds, stuff like that. So the need is definitely there. And I've only gotten positive input from community members that we've discussed that with. So
okay. The reason why I'm asking, I've been approached by a number of constituents. I mean, obviously, some people would like a skate park, some people would like other, amenities for younger kids. When we spend this kind of money, I want to make sure that we're engaging that community, because I think this is really, it's a great thing, and I commend staff for doing this. but you know, it's sort of a tree falling in the forest and nobody's around to hear it. This is one of these really good news things that we can really capitalize on and build a lot of enthusiasm in the community. With this kind of money, I would hope that we do a bit of outreach and get the community really excited. I know we've done it with the Kaboom builds and so forth. I think we had to postpone that build because of the COVID outbreak. Is that correct?
Yeah, we still have updates from Kaboom every couple of weeks on that.
Okay.
You know, looking at some different.
Because I think this is really an opportunity for us to really engage our residents in a way that's very, very positive. So I just wanted to just find out, first of all, what we've done so far, but if there's any opportunity for us to really reach out to that neighborhood and that community up there, I think it's something that they're going to get really excited about. And I think you're probably going to get some input on unless you've already made a decision of what equipment you want to buy and what you want to put in there. I just see this as a really great opportunity to improve our relationship with our residents up in that area.
That's very good. Council member, is that a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve it. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And just encourage staff as best we can. Let's really capitalize on this and get the community excited about it.
Very good. One request that I'll make of staff, maybe Ms. City Manager, you could take note on this. My request would be, and let's provide that publicly to all of our city council members. I'd like a report on the Quimby Parkland Fund, and maybe over the last 3 to 5 fiscal years, where was that money spent and how was it spent? It was alluded that we can use it for parkland expansion, but we also can use it for parkland program or park programming and activities. And I'd like to know on a plot map where exactly that money was spent in the city. And if you would please follow up on my request.
Sure.
I think that's important to have some information as we understand Quimby Parkland Fund. By the way, you'll remember that Councilman Quimby of the 3rd Ward later became, in the 1960s, a state assemblyman from the city of San Bernardino from the 3rd Ward. And it was named in his honor, the Quimby Parkland Act. Councilmember Ibarra.
Thank you, Mayor. Going off on some of the comments, I just for the public, if you guys can just maybe Mr. Tickmeyer or Chris, if you guys can explain the difference between Fund 268 and Fund 269 for the public. That wasn't in the packet, so I just thought I'd ask.
Ms. Ibarra, you're referring to two funds. Can you name them for the public? You named the number, but what's the fund name?
The way I'm seeing it here is Fund 268 CIP fiscal year 1920 available funds. It's Parkland DIF.
DIF,
Then
right.
Fund 269 requested allocation. That one, I believe, is Quimby Act Parkland DIF. But if we can explain the differences to the public.
Okay.
Sure. So I'm gonna take a shot at it here. So the DIF fee, that actually stands for Developer Impact Fee. So when a development comes in, there's a fee that they have to pay towards the impacts that they're going to have on our park space. And so that fee, those monies then have to, much like Quimby, are intended to be used to expand our parklands for use by because we're expanding the population when new developments come in, or we're expanding the usage when they come in. The Quimby Act, on the other hand, allows for cities and counties to collect a fee from the developer when they don't want to put parkland into their developments.
The credit.
And the credit, right. So we are then again able to use those fees to either acquire more land for a new park or to expand facilities at a park. They're not intended, neither the DIF nor the Quimby are intended for maintenance or replacement. They really are tied to expansion in some way, whether that's by expanding the volume of land or expanding a recreational feature, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so pretty much what the mayor also added to, it could also go towards the programs that the parks hold. No, the Quimby. The
So let
Quimby.
me clarify, and I apologize, Mayor, if I drew this conclusion. I used the word program, but really, I guess my point was that, so for example, if you were to put a skate park in, that is a new recreational feature. That is a new recreational, I use the word program, but for users, it's kind of a new thing to do. It's a new program for them to use. So I kind of misspoke when I used that word.
Okay. No problem. Thank you. We all make mistakes every now and then, I guess, don't we? Council member, any other council members? One last thing here. I really think that this might be an opportunity. We lost the $8.5 million in state grant funding. If we could maybe have, and Terry, this is more for you, we could have a workshop discussion on how do we get Fund 268 and 269. Can we bundle it and transfer interdepartmental transfers or not, and study that. We don't need to talk about it tonight, and see if we can combine those and use them exclusively at our Central Park, which is Second Park in the First Ward. So those are ways to really kind of super fund what we didn't get the $8.5 million of grant money. So that's an opportunity for us.
We can certainly look at that, Mayor, but I also want to remind you that we are going to apply again. There's another round, so we haven't given up hope.
Right. Fingers crossed. And I'm working those channels to make sure that the application, our lobbyists in Sacramento, has the appropriate tools to make that presentation. It's very important that we have Second Park or Central Park spruced up, and that's an opportunity. All right. I think we have a motion by Councilmember Nickel and a second by.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Mulvihill. And is there any objections? Okay, all right. So it's unanimous approval. Okay, thank you, council members. Let's go into our next segment. Items to be referred to committee. Councilmember Sanchez.
Yes, I alluded to this when we were discussing the update to the fee schedule. I would like the staff to come back with a couple recommendations as to fines fines in the municipal code on violations that are rampant in our city that we could consider updating, just like we did with illegal fireworks as well as fireworks in prohibited times and zones. We should be doing the same with some of the other bad actors that drain our city's resources. So I would ask that the staff bring back a couple recommendations for updates to those.
Okay, thank you. If there's no objection, I think no objections. All right, thank you, council member. Any other items? If not, oh yes, Councilmember Ibarra.
Yes, I'm just trying to get a status update from our city staff. I know a couple months ago, Councilman Sanchez and I were mentioning about campaign finance laws and how we can apply them in our city and maybe do workshops. I know council voted in favor of those workshops and they haven't been brought forward. I just wanted to see what the status update is on those.
Thank you, council member. We do have it on our list. As you know, with this pandemic that we've been dealing with, a lot of things are on the back burner, but we do have several items. Among them is campaign finance to bring back to you. So we'll work on a timeline for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council members, we got two, Nickel and Charette. Go ahead, Councilman Nickel.
We were anticipating getting an update sometime this month or a refresh on some of the survey information we had related to the workshop we had in the fall. What's the status on that? Are we still on target to get that supplemental information back to us?
We actually have a meeting scheduled with the ad hoc committee. I believe it might be next week. Rebecca's on the line. She'll probably have the date We were going to go to the ad hoc committee first, the Economic Development Ad hoc Committee.
So yes, we have an Economic Development Ad hoc Committee meeting that will review that on May 13th for discussion. So you'll have an update, and there will be a report coming to the full council the first meeting in July.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Kramer, if I could get a list of those members that sit on that ad hoc committee, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you. Councilmember Charette, go ahead, sir.
My question, Rebecca just piqued my interest in a meeting that we're going to have, and I think I'm a member of that committee, that we're going to have a report made on the survey. And I'm just curious why we're going to do that in May, and we're not going to have a report to the city council until July, and I guess there's a reason for that. That's kind of a question, kind of a statement and a question at the same time.
So Councilmember Charette, just to answer your question, you're going to have a tracking survey in June, the first week in June. And so we wanted to bring to the council ad hoc committee just an update in terms of what will be included in the tracking survey, and that tracking survey results will be reported to the full council. So
that's going to be May 13th, correct?
May 13th will be discussion of the tracking survey before we move forward with the tracking survey. Yes.
And then the tracking survey will take place in June?
The first week in June, yes.
All right. Okay, then I trust. Okay. It's bitten me before, but.
Okay, thank you.
No, I have one more comment, please. And that is, I'm not sure exactly how to word this exactly, or exactly what I'm asking for, except kind of a workshop on us as a body and how we operate and our rules. I'm thinking primarily right now, specifically about announcements. A long time ago, we used to make announcements at the city council meeting. And then we changed that and went to channel 3, and we made our announcements. I would like to consider going back to making announcements either at the beginning or at the end of the meeting for the council members, and give us our 3 minutes to make them, because I think they're more, there are things going on weekly and daily, and I think it's more effective if we do it, even then it's still going to be a 2-week lapse. But I think there are things that come up that I'd like to comment on, like tonight. I don't have anything for tonight, but there may have been something this past week, or there may have been somebody that I'd want to recognize, or there may have been, as I'm going to recognize somebody that passed away. I'd like to go back to the idea of having 3 minutes for council members to make announcements and or comments at the end of a meeting. So I don't know if that needs to go to a committee, or if we can just agree to do that, or what. But
well, you can't agree to do that tonight because it's not on the agenda. And this is the point of on your agenda where you would refer it to a committee or refer it to staff to bring it back to you to have a conversation.
Staff to get back to me, get back to us.
We can certainly do that.
Tell us how we go about it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ibarra.
Sorry, I just got reminded. I was able to read the public comments that we received, and I know we had a protest in the city last week. Do we have a plan or a timeline of when we can open up our city, or even have our council meetings publicly, or we're just waiting on the county and the state?
Councilmember Barr, we should have more information tomorrow on stage 2. The state is going to be issuing something, and then the county is going to follow up. So I can certainly send something out to you. Things happen so quickly, but we could also put something on the next agenda to update the public as well. But things are moving quickly, but we should have something more tomorrow on stage 2 of 4 stages that the state plans to reopen.
Okay, that would be great. I know people have been asking about that opening.
I understand.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, council members. At this point, I want, before we get into Councilmember Charette, and I know that you have a recognition, sir. We'll feature that in just a moment. I want to say publicly thank you to our staff for tonight. It was a great council meeting. We got a lot of progress, a lot of items moving forward in the right direction on some not. But I'm very grateful for our staff, and thank you, City Manager, for all your hard work, and our City Attorney. We appreciate you. I want to also highlight May 1st was a successful day in the City of San Bernardino. We featured SB Cares. It's a promotional coupon. You'll hear more information about it. Essentially, it was 12 participating restaurants in the City of San Bernardino that were all mom and pop, family-owned types of restaurants in our community. I'll be hosting several business owners and updating the community on the results of that. Very, very good news, and we're thankful for our residents for patronizing our local restaurants, and we thank you very much for a successful SB Cares Day on Friday, May 1st. It was a success, and we thank you. At this time, I'll recognize Councilman Charette. Please, sir, recognize that individual in memory of him or her.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. Ironically, it was also May 1st that my dear and good friend that I went to high school with and who was very, very involved with our community. He lived in Redlands, but he called San Bernardino home. Alan Bone passed away on Friday the 1st. He was very instrumental with our historical society and the railroad museum down there. It was an absolute shock to us who knew him and were close to him. He had surgery a week or two ago. We were not expecting good results from the surgery, and he came out of the surgery really in pretty good shape and prepared to go on to the City of Hope for some treatments. And I was fortunate enough, I texted him on Thursday. He didn't get back to me. He called. In fact, I texted and said, whoever's got Alan's phone, please give me an update. The next day he called me. We had a wonderful conversation. And that following morning, Saturday morning, I was called by his wife that he had passed through the night. So it was very, very fast. And he was just a remarkable guy, a firefighter. Had worked at the railroad, had worked and like I say, we went to high school together. So many friends, and just a high quality guy that, as I say, lived in Redlands, but really considered San Bernardino his home. And he will be greatly missed. He was a great asset to our community. He worked tirelessly on the Santa Fe Railroad Museum and on our Historical Society. And I just can't say enough about the guy. He's just a great, great friend and a great, great individual. And he will be very missed. And I appreciate you closing this meeting in his memory and honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Charette. And we, on behalf of the City of San Bernardino, we close the memory of Alan Bone. I remember Alan helping me in my office as we, it was historic touch here in the office of the mayor, and we appreciate his contributions to our city, and we send our deep condolences to the family. At this time, we'll go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. The next joint regular meeting of the Mayor and City Council will be on Wednesday, May 20th. Our closed session will begin at 5:30 p.m. and open session will begin at 7 p.m. Thank you, City Council members, for your service to our community, and we thank you, our public, for viewing tonight's and participating. That is all. Thank you. Be safe.
Good night, everyone.